yo creo que ahorita ya.
Okay, see this? See that?
Oh,
We've started, but we're waiting for a little bit of everybody to connect this morning. Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Clinton Brocope, and I'm program director for a nonprofit called Traditional Native American Farmers Association, and we're co-hosting this today's Corn Summit, second annual Corn Summit with International Indian Treaty Council. And before we really get started in this, we've asked Valentina Lopez, mine from Guatemala, to open in our meeting this day with a prayer, and then we'll go into more formal introductions and some housekeeping rules for today's meeting. So with that, Valentina.
Can I do 8 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday? I actually remember, because I live 2 hours away. I keep forgetting about that. But can we do 10? Okay, all right. No, thank you so much for.
This is the interpreter speaking. I'm not sure if Valentina heard. I'm not sure if she's hearing.
ya está activado.
Valentina, we're ready.
Clayton, if you can hear me, this is James, the interpreter. I'm speaking to Valentina in Spanish, but she can't hear. There must be a technical problem on her end.
Is it possible? I don't know if you can send her a chat.
I'll do so.
Thank you. Whoever's just logging in now, we're trying to make a connection with Valentina for our opening prayer. It seems like there may be a technical glitch at this point. She's sitting there, and hopefully we can get her a message to start this day off.
Hi all, this is Andrea, one of the co-hosts. Friendly reminder, please mute your microphone if you're not speaking, because otherwise we hear a lot of background conversation. Thank you.
So this is James, the interpreter again. Hello, everyone. Oh, maybe she's logging on now.
A
Good
los que
afternoon. Good afternoon to everyone. Good morning. Good morning to those who are connected on this day in the Mayan calendar, where we once again celebrate the sacred day of corn, the mother and father who gives us food every day throughout the world. Thank you to our ancestors who left us this kernel of corn, which sustains us every day. And thank you to Ishukami, our grandmother, the owner of the corns, the creator of the corn. Thank you to our ancestors because they loved their culture. They protected their legacy, which was destroyed so much during colonization throughout the Americas. And one of the sacred things during the Mayan civilization was our sacred corn. Thank you to the sacred places and temples where we honor the sacred day of corn planting and harvest in the home of Ishu Make, Takutim, the sacred place, Takalikapa, sacred place, Mishkok Echo, sacred site, Tuishim, sacred site, Kamina Kuyu, sacred site in Guatemala, among others in the United States, the San Antonio sacred site, the Emes sacred site, the Sandia sacred site, the Santa Fe sacred site, the San Francisco sacred site. Thank you. Thank you to grandfather son. Thank you to grandmother moon. Thank you to the rain, to our mother earth, and to the animals. They are important elements who allow for the growth and maturing of our sacred corn. And in the name of all of these sacred elements, we wish to acknowledge this day. We ask for permission to plant and to harvest our sacred elements. We have grandmother Kawuk with us today. She protects us in all of the problems we face today. And we do not lack for our sacred substance, the corn. We thank our grandmothers and grandfathers. We ask permission to grandfather Kukumaks with our brothers and sisters who will be meeting and discussing over these 2 days as they dialogue and analyze about our sacred corn. We ask permission for all of the spirits of our Mother Earth, the owners of the corn, the grandmothers and the grandfathers. We ask that this blessing reach all and give all the force and the energy to continue to harvest our sacred corn. Thank you, Grandfather, heart of the sky and heart of the earth. Thank you, heart of the wind, heart of the water. Thank you. Thank you, grandmothers and grandfathers. And thank you to all who are connected right now. Thank you. Thank you, grandmothers and grandfathers. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, grandfathers and grandmothers. May our organizers commit great energy and strength to this, and that this strength may reach all who are connected. Thank you. Thank you, grandmothers and grandfathers. Thank you. Thank you to all who are connected. Thank you and greetings to all who are joining us on this day in our Mayan calendar. Thank you very much.
I believe maybe she's completed. Thank you, Valentina, for those for this prayer to prepare us for the discussions for the next several days. This is the second annual Corn Summit that has been co-hosted by Traditional Native American Farmers Association and International Indian Treaty Council. Again, my name is Clayton Brockopay. I'm a Bear Clan Mohawk, currently living in, since 1973, my wife's community of Tetsuke Awinge, or Tetsuke Pueblo, northern New Mexico. As we all know, corn is a mother to us. And as people, with corn as part of their culture, it's central to us, because corn is our mother, and like our human mother, the corn nourishes us, gives us comfort, and teaches us. And corn is found in our creation stories from the very beginning. And one of the, I guess, the ideas, the thoughts of hosting these summits around corn, inviting people from the Central and North America, and perhaps even South America, if people are tuning in today, or in the Caribbean, that in those stories of corn, they're humans and corn are interconnected. We're one and the same. So one of the ways to, I guess, to assess us, our health, our communities, our cultures, health, and prosperity, is by looking at corn, since we are one and the same. And you know, how much in today's world, how is corn central to our well-being, our wealth, our health? And by discussing that and re-examining that, in the past, we know that our ancestors met like this and discussed things, maybe about corn, but other things too. And that was something that the Farmers Association and the Treaty Council wanted to, I guess, restore those connections, that dialogue with each other. And I'm so happy that we're able to open this day up with some of the people from the Mayan world. Last year, we actually hosted a live event in Belize, Central America, in a community called Pueblo Viejo. It's a Mayan community in the southern part of Belize. Again, we invited people from Central America. We had some corn farmers from parts of Belize, also Guatemala, and United States, and in Canada. There was a successful meeting, the very first one, with the intention that the farmers, the people, and the knowledge holders of corn could continue this this dialogue, this conversation, so that we can even learn more and more of our ancestors' knowledge around corn. In this event today, we're going to be covering some histories and some of the current, I guess, challenges we're facing as people in our communities, to hold on to corn, to protect their corn, and also to exchange knowledge around the food. When we do this, when we did the live event in Pueblo Viejo, we were, I guess, honored with the wonderful food from the cooks, from the corn from those communities, and we were able to enjoy and taste and share conversations during our meals. Through a virtual event, this is not quite possible, but we will be able to be talking about corn foods and the health benefits and the ways corns can help us through this time of climate chaos or climate change. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Andrea Carmen with the International Indigenous Treaty Council. And I'm so glad that they've been able to support this work and continue to support Indigenous peoples. Thank you.
Diosim Chaniabu, Mawayim, respectful greetings to all of you. And again, it's an honor for us to be able to co-host with Clayton and the Traditional Native American Farmers Association to help bring us together to talk about the most sacred and important things of our life, our traditional foods. I'm from the Yaqui Nation. I'm in Tucson, Arizona right now, but our nation also extends into Sonora, Mexico. And the corn is also a basis for our food, along with the beans, the squash, the chiles, and all of the things that come from our Mother Earth. One of our elders, our traditional healers, said that everything that comes from the earth in the natural way is a medicine, including our traditional foods. And one of the reasons that so many people in our nations, our communities are sick, why we were so vulnerable to the pandemic, which we just are still going through in many places, is that our access and use of our traditional foods, our access to our lands, our ecosystems, our waters have been affected by the process of colonization. We're eating food that's not healthy instead of our original foods. And that I know there are many speakers during these 2 days that are going to address that, but it's very important what we're doing here. It's maybe the most important thing. And because of the pandemic, we've had to learn, even IITC, as old as we were created and founded in 1974 on the Standing Rock Reservation with about 5,000 delegates from all over the hemisphere. And we decided then to go and seek an international voice because it was a consensus that we could not find justice for the many kinds of human rights violations we were experiencing in our homelands at the hands of the colonial government. How could we find justice within their systems of justice, so to speak? So we've been doing this work of bringing Indigenous nations together to address our most basic common concerns, our land rights, treaty rights, cultural rights, and right to food for many years, and taking that voice to the international arena, to the United Nations, where we can impact policies and programs that are going to affect our peoples in a positive way on the ground, address some of these very critical challenges we're facing, like climate change, like the genetic modification of our traditional foods. The first international gathering that we co-hosted, we actually co-hosted it with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization in Guatemala. And I want to thank our Mayan spiritual leader for the opening, also Valentina. But the Declaration of Atitlan that was adopted by consensus of Indigenous peoples from all regions of the world affirmed our right to food, our food sovereignty, and defined food sovereignty as the right of our peoples to define our own policies and strategies for the production, distribution, and consumption of food with respect to our own cultures and our own systems of managing and working with our lands in rural areas. And it's considered a precondition for food security. The UN likes to talk about food security, but we talk about food sovereignty because we have to be in control of these things. The UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, I'm sure you all have a copy, affirms our rights to our traditional food sources, our subsistence in Article 20. It affirms our right to the productive capacity and the environmental integrity of our lands and waters. It affirms our rights to our traditional lands and resources, not whatever land governments say are ours or reservation, or in many places there's no recognition of our lands, of our land rights and land tenure. But the UN Declaration adopted by the UN General Assembly does affirm those rights. And it affirms the rights to our cultural heritage, including, it specifically says in Article 31, our seeds, our knowledge of our plants and animals. All of these things we're working on, but it's stronger if we can work together. When we're in person, we can trade seeds, and like we always did traditionally in time immemorial, we can trade knowledge. But we can still talk to each other using this new technology that we've gotten a little bit used to. And I really appreciate this opportunity to bring our nations together, because we're stronger when we stand together. We have common challenges, common kinds of oppression in all the different countries we live in, but we also have the solutions as Indigenous peoples living closest to the earth. And those solutions now, suddenly, in the last few years, the international community is interested in what we have to say. I think they're really scared for their own survival. So suddenly they want to hear from us, but we have to be careful. We have to protect these ways. We have to protect our right to free prior informed consent before we engage in sharing with them. So all of these things, we need each other. The most important thing is that we come together. And I just want to conclude my opening by noting that we have had several Indigenous peoples food sovereignty gatherings, not just focusing on corn, but on salmon, on Pacific food systems, here, Sonora Desert food systems and tepary beans, and each one produces an amazing result based on our traditional knowledge and our knowledge of our own food systems. All of this work is important at the United Nations, when we interact with the countries we live in to demand our rights and recognition of our knowledge and practices. But I just want to conclude, and I know Chili Yazi is one of our speakers. He was at the third International Corn Conference that we had in Tecpan, Guatemala, back in 2017. And he said, finally, and most important, we commit to continue planting our corn. Putting seeds in the ground is the most essential of all strategies for the protection of the corn. The other strategies on all levels we have described will serve to support this simple and profound life-giving act. So I honor the planters and the farmers, those that are keeping these ways alive, sharing with our younger generations, and all of you who've come together to share your knowledge and your commitment to keeping our peoples alive and well through these ways, traditional ways. So Chokwe Tesia, welcome to the conference. And thank you again for partnering with us, Clayton. And we look forward to many years of continued partnership and solidarity between all of our peoples and organizations. Chokwe Tesia, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Quickly before we move on, what I would like to do is to provide some housekeeping and some general instructions for today's conference. But before I do that, I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Chris Honani. I am Navajo and Hopi. I am currently the administrative and program assistant for the International Indian Treaty Council. And I will be assisting with everything Zoom related today. So today's session is going to be conducted in English and Spanish. And if you haven't already, what we want to ask you to do is to enable your Zoom interpretation. And so I will share my screen here to give you some instructions on how this can be done. Okay. So in order to enable Zoom interpretation, what you will want to do is to look at the bottom of your screen. You should see a globe. You will select that globe and you will select your language. We don't ask people to mute the original audio. It's good to be able to hear the language that's being spoken on the floor in the background. You'll hear it very slightly. It'll be muted, but the primary language you'll hear will be the language that you select. Yeah, so if you're hearing English and Spanish at the same time, that is what you will need to do in order to hear just one language. And our interpreters put the instructions in the chat as well. So the instructions are there in English and Spanish. I also put in the chat a little bit earlier a link to the conference agenda in both English and Spanish. So you will find that link there that will allow you to view the agenda. And real quickly, Clayton, do you want to go over the agenda as a group here, or what do you want to do?
Maybe you could read it out because I'm not sure if everybody received it. I'm assuming people have.
Okay, I can share my screen and it'll have the
Okay,
agenda on
yeah,
it.
okay, great.
All right. So far we have covered the first 3 sessions of the summit, and we are a little bit ahead of schedule. So I am going to briefly go over this, but actually one thing I forgot to mention um, is to remember to mute your audio if you are not presenting or speaking. That way we will be able to have clear audio coming from the presenter. So remember to please mute your audio when you are not speaking. Okay, so today our first keynote speaker is going to be a presenter from the southern corn growing regions. Berenice Sanchez, Nawa. She is a coordinator for Mexico and Central America for Alianza Milpa. That will be following this session of housekeeping. So that will follow that, followed by the second keynote speaker from the northern corn growing regions, Dwayne, or Chili Yazi, as many people may know him as. He is Dene or Navajo, and he is the Shiprock Traditional Farmers Cooperative Coordinator. Followed by a break. And in that break, we are going to be playing a video that highlights the work of an organization that we have invited, and I will provide more information about that video a little bit later. Followed by the break, we will have breakout sessions. We will have 4 separate breakout sessions. And the first, as you see here, is restoring and saving seeds. Clayton Brascopy will be in that room leading the discussion, followed by room 2, adapting to climate change. And all of these rooms actually will be going on at the same time. So it'll be up to you to choose which room you would like to be in. Room 3, we will see planting by the moon, and that will be led by Stephen Silverbear McComber, Mohawk, traditional ceremonial manager and farmer, Kanawaki territory in Canada. And then in room 4, we will have traditional corn foods and nutrition. That will be led by Saul Vicente Vasquez, Zapoteca. He is the IITC Food Sovereignty Program Coordinator, and he's from Oaxaca, Mexico. And just to let people know, if you see IITC, that stands for the International Indian Treaty Council. And then we will also have Laura Manth, Oneida Nation, co-founder of Ohi Laku. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Among the corn stalks from the Oneida Nation in Wisconsin. And then to conclude today's session, we will have a outcomes and recommendations drafting session, or actually more of a brainstorming collaborative session in which we will collect all outcomes and recommendations from the day. And one of the goals of this event is to draft a report that details all of the outcomes and recommendations that were made in this conference. And that report will be used in different policy making bodies in order to provide the perspective of Indigenous peoples in regards to corn and our traditional foods. So I'll stop the screen share here. That will detail the agenda for today. So Clayton, would you like to follow up with that?
Yeah, like I was saying, I'm not sure if everybody received the copy of that. What you could do is actually email one of us if you didn't receive a copy, and we'll try to get that to you before the end of the day. But our next keynote presenter, I was going to ask Andrea if she could do a better job of introducing, and then we can move on into the, I guess, the heart of the of this summit.
I can introduce Berenice, my dear sister, who we have known each other for many, many years. She's been a representative and food sovereignty consultant to the International Indian Treaty Council. I'm trying to think of what year we started working together. She was a delegate from Mexico to the first Indigenous Peoples Global consultation and conference on climate change that took place in Alaska. And for many years, she's been working to bring Indigenous peoples together in Mexico, especially to form a unified and strong voice to address food sovereignty. So now she is the president, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, of the ANIPA, which is in English, the National Association of Indigenous Peoples for Food Sovereignty in Mexico, and has many, many years of experience fighting for her peoples, San Francisco Magu, the state of Mexico in the country of Mexico, as well as for the rights of Indigenous peoples around food sovereignty throughout Mexico and throughout the world. So I think that probably gives enough of an introduction. Berenice, if I left something out, I was not prepared for this, but I'm very honored to be able to introduce you, and I look forward to your words of wisdom. Choko Tesia, the floor is yours, Berenice.
Berenice was on, but
Bueno, buenos
oh,
días.
she's
Muchas
there.
gracias, Andrea. Muchas gracias, Clayton. Agradeciendo a todos
Thank
los
you very much. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you. Thank you, everybody that got together and to make this conference possible, this gathering possible. And I started with all this in 2010 in Vicente Guerrero at that workshop when Andrea started to talk to me about this topic of food sovereignty, about this topic among Indigenous peoples in order to strengthen all our territorial defense. That was at least how I have been interpreting the ideas that I was presented, this idea that's so important about food sovereignty, and especially this is tied to fundamentally to corn. It's also as an ancestral plant, a millenary plant, a sacred plant. A little bit ago, I was with my baby. That's what I was doing. So this is my year during the pandemic, not just getting pregnant, but also taking care of my baby. And I wanted to show you that this is also part of our responsibilities as women, as mothers of our Mother Earth, to take care of our children in order for them to love our corn, especially because it is such an important part of our food. These are food that is so important to nourish and nurture our baby, not only in our uterus, but also when they go from being breastfed to their first foods. These are lessons that I have been receiving during these last few months, this last year. So I would like to thank you for considering me to be a part of this meeting, to participate here, and to share my presentation here. I have been on maternity leave and I've just finished my maternity leave. So it's great that through this conference, I can share with you what I've learned. And this is, can you see my screen?
Sí.
Ok. Quiero hacerlo en grande.
I wanted to make it bigger,
Pero no me deja. Ya está.
but it doesn't allow me. There, well, that's enough.
Bien,
Okay.
Alianza Milpa surge
The Alianza Milpa, or the Milpa Alliance, we started as a collective in 2017, and I'm happy to see Clayton, and he was one of the people that has also started on this road with a Milpa Alliance. It's a collective through which we are supporting a network of corn guardians, and I have learned to see how corn can help so that young people, young Indigenous people, activists can stay in their homes, can stay in their communities, they can be rooted, they can be strengthen their identity, and they can have also a like a way to have economic support, economic support that's rooted, deeply rooted in their own identity in order so that they can start to stop this huge wave of immigration that's taking place in many of our regions. So this regions, I called it the maize made us peoples. And this corn helped us to make us become peoples that were no longer nomads, rather made it helped us to settle down, helped us to find a territory. And it's the corn that has really helped us to give us, how would you call it, this way of to configure our territories. Corn has been the leader, has been the teacher, or male or female teacher, depending on your tradition. It can be a masculine or it can be a feminine essence, but it can also be an essence that changes from masculine to feminine depending at its moment of growth. And the origin of our people is then tied to our creation stories, especially the ones that talk to us about corn and about these creation stories. They talk to us not only about our stories and our culture and our spirituality, it also teaches us how corn is part of our memories throughout time, how corn is also becomes medicine for us, and also it is part of our configuration of our DNA. Corn gave us a memory. It gave, it's been longer than 10,000 years ago. It started to be cultivated, and it was a just a small kernel of 8. It was a plant of just like had 8 lines of kernels, but now there are these the different kinds of corn, the corn cob that's even much bigger that comes from Nayarit, and it's even 71 centimeters long, and it's from lands that are very fertile, and it's also native corn, and it's an original corn that came from that area. It's been there for thousands of years, and it's been improving traditionally because as indigenous peoples, we do science. We also carry out science. It's not just this terminology that Western science has given us to do be improvers of the traditional knowledge. We are also scientists. We also creators of this seed, and this seed has also been the creator of our peoples. It is a divine gift which was granted at the sacrifice of many of our gods. And in many of our creation stories, we were made from the maize, from the Nawa people and other peoples. It was given to us as sustenance when creation had already been made. And in this photo that you see there down below, I hope you can, if you are familiarized with this photo, you can see the different, how corn went changing biologically, genetically from the creation of corn. And it was a teocintle, and this is the grandfather corn that continues to exist in Mexico. It's a wild form of corn, and the corn cob that we also are familiar with, the bigger ones that you see there, it didn't have its center of olote, this center of the corn. This went growing. This is the hub of the corn. And it continued to grow because of its genetic. And it didn't have the totomosle that covers the kernels. And if you don't take it off through the process of the cultivation that we know, then the corn can't separate itself from the corn cob. It can't fall to the ground. The corn also needs us in order for it to be cultivated. We can't just save the seeds. Those seeds need to be deposited into the earth. They have to be cultivated so that corn can continue to exist. And corn also gave us the um, creative capacity. It nurtured our creative capacity. And I don't just say it um, in cultural terms, but also biochemical terms. Corn is one of the foods that has one of the greatest amounts of vitamin B1, and this also affects us like our mood. We feel happy when we have corn on our tables. When we cultivate it, when we plant it, then we have this positive state. It also influences us in our ability to concentrate, to our memory and our sleep. Vitamin B1 is also very important for us when we're doing a lot of intellectual effort. And when I say this, I say that corn gives us intelligence. It makes us men and women. It gives us a conscience. It gives us the capacity to think, to create. Another one of the vitamins that it is very important is vitamin B3 that helps us to metabolize the carbohydrates, proteins, and grass. It also is very important during periods of stress because it helps to favor the good functioning of our glands, and it helps us to have better sleep. And those times when there's a lot of diseases associated with stress, and many of our foods are being substituted by junk food, we really need urgently to help our people return to corn, that this can be used as their foods, because I think diabetes is something that uh, one of the our that is taking the lives of our people, because it's causing a lot more disabilities because of losing our different parts of our body, or blindness. And when we go to the doctor, they tell us, no, you can't eat the tortilla, without knowing the value of the nutritious content of the tortilla, because it helps us to control our weight. It helps us to really n- level off our blood pressure. It also helps to regulate glucose. So this is an error that our medicals are prohibiting the corn tortilla. A corn tortilla that is made from traditional ways is the corn tortilla that I'm suggesting that we should eat. And corn also marks our birth. I learned that many peoples, they practice that using the corn cob, they use it to cut the umbilical cord when it's born, when the child is born, and it helps it to scar much better. In the southern part of Mexico, in Chiapas, they would cut off the umbilical cord over the corn cob, and then that corn cob that was filled with its child, the blood, it would be buried into the land, and that way it would enhance the spirit of the community. And then in the Tutanuca people, then the child is they use this they give it to the child when this red corn cob, and so it helps the child to be able to be to have better breastfeeding and to have better food. And then this helps the child to have better to use something that is helpful to him throughout his life. And also, corn constitutes one of the first foods for the baby, like atole, which is a corn, like kind of milkshake kind of from the corn, and it's also tortilla. And that's why I say it belongs to us and it comes from our DNA. In Mexico, we have 60 different types of corn
adaptados a diferentes condiciones
that
climáticas,
have been adapted to different different climates, uh, from scarcity, from to wind. They adapt themselves to the different kinds of regions where they exist, and they exist from the sea level all the way to 3,000 3,000 feet or meters above the sea level. We have corn cobs that are very thick, that are very thin. We also um, have 32 types of varieties, um, as the teocintle, right? The one that just came from those 8 kernels that now has 32 kernels, or the ones that was 71 kernels. There's also been the
But
capacity to
also,
create
we've had the
that
capacity
can establish
to
its own
create
nitrogen.
a breed of corn that obtains its nitrogen from the air itself. This is a corn found in Oaxaca. It's a type of corn that has a gel that is released in its roots that has bacteria that allows the corn to assimilate the nitrogen. So then it's not necessary to group the corn planting together with planting beans in order for the corn to receive the nitrogen. With this corn, the corn itself has the ability to acquire the nitrogen. Also, as part of our indigenous science and spirituality, we talk about the symbiotic relationship of the three sisters. We also talk about the fungus known as huitlacoche, which has properties to combat pulmonary diseases. Indeed, we have used it for some COVID-19 symptoms, also to fight cancer and diabetes. Corn should not be grown by itself alone. Corn is part of a cornfield that we in our communities understand. Now it's more and more we see monocrop cornfields instead of our traditional corn plots. Within our agroecology framework, we not only speak of the three sisters, but we also talk about our capacity to generate the nutrients that the earth may absorb in different ways. And that is what the corn absorbs, the beans do not absorb, and what the squash absorbs, the other crops do not absorb. It's also related to the nutrients they get from the air. And with our agroecological approach, we can combat the diseases that affect the crops as well as the diseases that affect human beings. It is a complete food group that supplies nutrients such as proteins, amino acids, and vitamins and minerals. We also plant the maguey plants, which are very important for agroecological reasons as well as our cultural reasons. And these maguey plants help us avoid certain pests, such as the grasshoppers, which we also eat. We consume them as an important source of protein, and this also helps us to avoid respiratory diseases. So we have this complex nutrient system that provides proteins, amino acids, vitamins, and minerals. And this is some information that I'm only recently learning about, that chili pepper consumption, which is so common in Mexico, doesn't only contribute a flavor, but it also helps to allow these vitamins, proteins, and amino acids to be more digestible. It is a digestion facilitator for these proteins. So it is not merely a flavor ingredient, but also a contributes to the digestion of the products that come from our corn plots. And this allows us to have a more balanced and varied diet. And it also helps us balance our Mother Earth. So the corn plot is not simply rows of corn. It is a complex system, and we must understand this within our culture because it is being lost. We see that we also, and we see that the white or the yellow corn is now being favored, and the other colors of corn are falling out of favor. Corn is a part of a sacred ceremony and part of our daily life. In Mexico, there are some of these celebrations that are not being celebrated as part of daily life as they were as part of the colonization. But we see here some of the pre-Hispanic traditional celebration dates which are related to, for example, the cleaning of the earth in order to plant the corn. We have in January cleaning our lands. In February, the cycle begins, which can be through leaving crops fallow or burning or turning the earth or the blessing of seeds. 19th of March, we have the planting, the seasonal corn planting, and May 3rd, the prayers for and requests for rain and winds. May 15th, the blessing of the tools and the animals used for the harvest and the planting. On June 13th, the planting of beans and chiles. On July 24th, the prayers for good rains and to keep the hail away from us. On August 15th, the blessing of the cornfield. And on September 29th, the prayers and the for Pericon. And on November 2nd, the harvest begins. We do our offers for the dead. We select seeds, we harvest the beans, and we take away the dry residue, and December, the earth rests. This is part of a calendar we have that we see we have been, but as part of colonization, all of these dates we now know are related to things in the Catholic calendar, but they are all part of pre-Hispanic celebrations. So the through the corn and through the stars and the weather, we have our own calendar. And corn also allows us to exist, to subsist, and to resist. Corn allowed us to exist because corn made us people. Corn allows us to subsist because it feeds us. When there was nothing else to eat, we had corn. And there are many prayers in among different peoples where in difficult times, such as war, the people prayed with the corn and the corn stalks. And it has allowed us to resist. And this is something I base especially on a prayer that I heard in Michoacan, in the community of Charan, where there was a type of war that took place between drug traffickers and the forest poachers and the armed forces. And there was a fight to protect the indigenous territory against the illegal logging, because this illegal logging was putting our sacred springs in danger. And it was the women who first came to defend and speak up, and they demanded the men take action to defend the territory. And they began to organize and organize block by block to defend their territory. They created brigades and they closed off the roads. They controlled the access. But all of this, what was fundamental to all of this was that they had the corn in their homes. They had the foods that they had stored, and they prohibited and also the entry of junk food and people from outside of the community. They prohibited all of these junk food brands such as Bimbo bread and Saritas and all of the junk food because they wanted to protect their community within their territory and to protect their sacred springs and protect their forests and their lands. And all of this was possible because the farmers had stored their corn. And so that's why we know corn is sacred to us and we must continue to maintain it and strengthen it to keep our territory, our seeds, and our water, because that is how we maintain our identity and our dignity. There are drug traffickers that try to invade our territory. There are also in areas where there's a lot of immigration, we connect to these people through The knowledge that corn gives us our identity, and the corn allows us to continue to defend our territory and our lives and our future generations. It is through corn that we are able to ensure that our people will continue to resist, continue to exist, subsist, and resist. And recovering food sovereignty gives us dignity. When people lose dignity, when they lose their territory, they lose dignity. And when people immigrate and leave, one of the saddest things is when it may be a forced migration. One of the things we lose is our connection to the Mother Earth. And we have brothers and sisters who are no longer in their territories. And they can find ways to sustain and have to feed ourselves as people leave these territories and move to cities. This lack of productive capacity can lead to desperation and desolate communities and lack of of land for cultivation. So it's essential for us to strengthen our identity. I'm not sure if I have any minutes left. I think I've reached the end of my time. So I would like to close by telling you that through the network of the Corn Guardians and the Milpa Alliance we have in Mexico, we have been so fortunate to have this case with 4 young people in Santa Maria Cuclina. This is a town with so much marginalization, so much poverty, where these young people worked so hard to recover their native seeds. And they now have 39 different varieties of beans they have identified, different colors of corn, and they, through this work, found how they rejected the ideas now to migrate to Mexico City or leave. Now they are young professional men who are working in their communities and feeding their families and have a dignified life, providing economic results, not only for their own families, but for their entire community. And this was made possible by thinking and recognizing that corn allows us to exist, subsist, and resist. Thank you.
The message you brought to everyone today is inspiring. And as I was saying earlier, we know that corn is our true mother and provides us not only our well-being, comfort, and our wealth. And I guess we need to learn that lesson by engaging with her. We actually have a few minutes before our next scheduled presentation. So if you could take a few questions. I know there's questions that people would like to ask. We could ask, and then give us a little bit more in-depth information on your presentation.
Uh, Good morning. Can I ask a question, Ms. Flip?
You may.
Good morning. I just wanted to ask Doña Maria, if there is any organic or traditional fungicide for corn that are attracting fungus.
¿Puedo responder ahora?
Yes, may I respond?
Yes.
Bien. Esta es una de las
Yes.
preguntas más frecuentes
This
que tenemos
is one of the
los
most
pueblos
common
actualmente,
questions
incluso en los propios
we
pueblos
have
indígenas.
in our
Siempre
towns
estamos
and
preguntando
among our
cómo
indigenous
controlar las
peoples.
plagas,
We're
cómo
always
controlar las
asking
enfermedades de mi
how to
cultivo,
control
con
pests,
qué,
how to control
cómo puedo
disease
conservar las
with my
semillas.
crops,
Y
how
es
can I
cierto,
conserve
existen
the
preparaciones
seeds.
a
And
través de plantas
it's
medicinales
true that there are
para
certain
nuestros procesos de
preparations
cultivo
through
que impiden
medicinal
que nuestros
plants and
maíces
through
germen,
the
que nuestro
crops
maíz
themselves
prospere
that
o que nuestras
prevents
semillas se
pests
echen a perder antes de poder consumirlas.
and
Dentro,
prevent
por
our
ejemplo, de la
seeds and our
cuestión de la
crops
conservación
from
de la
rotting
semilla,
before
hay un
we
relato
can
de la llegada de los
use them.
españoles
There's a
a través
story
de Córdoba,
regarding
México,
conservation of the
actualmente
seeds that
México.
comes from the
En esta
period of
zona
the
cultivaban
Spaniards
con unas
arriving and
vasijas de
what
barro que
in
se
our
llamaban
Mexican territory.
placomamones.
They had these large
Digamos que
clay
se había conservado un
vessels.
maíz
They were called
durante
cuescomates,
más de 30 años.
and the corn had
Y
been
esta es
kept in
una
those
vasija
pots
hecha
for over
de
30
barro,
years.
de
It's a
mezcla
clay vessel
de tierra
made with a
con
mixture of
pasto
clay
que
and
conserva la temperatura
earth
adecuada para poder
to
resguardar esas
conserve the
semillas, no
proper
solo por un
temperature in
año,
order to
que eso es lo que normalmente se
keep the
resguarda de
seeds,
maíz en una
not
familia,
for only 1 year, which is
sino
what a family
alrededor
might
de
normally
2
do,
años,
to keep it for a
porque
year,
normalmente se está
but
sembrando
not
y
just
se
for
está
2
poniendo
years.
tierra
Normally,
constantemente
the families keep their
y
seeds and they're constantly
en términos
planting the earth, and
de
that way they
enfermedades,
continue to
hay
keep
diferentes
them
preparados
fresh.
de semillas
But in terms of controlling
de plantas
pests,
medicinales con los cuales combatir las
there
plagas.
are
El
different
mismo es
preparations to combat pests.
una excelente planta
Chili
para
peppers
controlar las plagas, las
themselves are
enfermedades,
an excellent
más aún
plant
si lo mezclamos con
for
cebolla y
fighting
con ajo.
pests,
Esto es
especially when we
espectacular en
mix
salsa
them with
y nos
onions and
permite
garlic, which
hacer
is just almost like making
ahuyentar las
salsa.
plagas. Es
And this helps us
y
to
de verdad, no solo ayuda a nuestros cuerpos a
prevent
protegernos,
pests.
sino que
So
también puede
we
ayudar
don't
a
just
nuestro
use it
cultivo
for the
a
spicy flavor that we consume for our
beneficiarse.
bodies,
El olor
but
que
we
tiene el
also
plato
use
del
it
ajo,
to
acompañado
fight pests.
de
And
las especies
accompanied
que
with
tiene
the garlic, which
el
contains
es
the
poderoso para
capsaicin,
controlar, para combatir, para
this
alejar
gives us a powerful
muchas
tool
de las plagas.
to fight
Inclusive
many pests.
tenemos plantas que pueden ser asociadas al cultivo
Also, there are
para poder
plants which
ayudarnos a
may be
resguardar
associated
las
with our
plagas.
crops that can
Por
help us
ejemplo,
to
la
repel
rosa, la
pests,
manzanilla, plantas que
such
son súper
as
olorosas y que
Santa Maria
normalmente no van a
and
estar dentro de la milpa, sino alrededor.
others that can be
El,
planted around
los magueyes también
the
ayudan
corn plot, not inside of
como
it.
refugio
The maguey
de animales
plants
que
also
son
help to
controladores de
provide
plagas,
refuge
como por ejemplo
for
las
the
serpientes
animals,
que
such
se
as
pueden haber
snakes, that
refugiado
can help
en el
us
maguey, nos
combat
ayuda a combatir los ratones. Y los
pests.
ratones,
Snakes always like the maguey
al comer
plants,
nuestro
and
maíz,
they help
ya está
control the
listo para ser
mice,
cosechado y
because
para
mice
poder
always want to come in
prepararlo
and eat our
en
corn when it's
y que se
ready
refugian en la
for
milpa
us
porque ahí
to
van a tener alimento.
harvest it. Those mice are hiding in our corn plots so they can try to go eat
Que nos van a
our
ayudar
corn. But if we have the maguey plants, then it will provide
hay
refuge for the
relatos
snakes that help
en
control
México en
the
los que se habla de la
mice
existencia de
population.
unas serpientes
Also,
dentro
there's
de las
stories in
milpas
Mexico that
debido
talk about
hacia Cruz
the
y esta serpiente es una serpiente
serpent
sagrada.
in the corn
Es
plots,
a la vez el símbolo de
and that
Quetzalcóatl,
serpent is a
es
sacred serpent.
el dios que nos dio
It is also the symbol of Quetzalcoatl, which is the god who gave us the grain of corn. And if we kill that serpent, we put our corn plots at risk. So that story teaches us not only about our cosmovision, but it also teaches us about our agriculture and our economy and what we do to protect
Okay,
our
muchas
seeds and
gracias.
our food. Thank you very much.
Can I ask a question, or is there still time for one question?
I seen the chat, a question from Melissa Rose. Maybe she could unmute and ask the question. I think it's about nutrition.
Thanks, Clayton. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just had a question. If you could talk more about how the traditional processing of the corn preserves the nutrition compared to commercially processed and grown seeds. I'm interested because teaching pregnant mothers how to prevent diabetes by having access to our traditional foods.
Bien, en torno a esta cuestión, yo estoy investigando
Yes,
bastante.
regarding this question, while I was pregnant, I was researching this a lot because I wanted to ensure that I would have a natural diet, which would prevent me from gaining so much weight and would also provide good nutrition for my baby. And to make sure that I would not also have to take so many pills, vitamins that all of the doctors recommend and prescribe. And there's a vitamin recommended, especially during the first 3 months of pregnancy. And I'm forgetting the name of this vitamin right now, but they always give us a bottle of those capsules. It's a, forgive me, I forgot the name of that vitamin. Yes, so folic acid. Yes, exactly. Corn contains folic acid, so we do not need to consume those folic acid capsules because it will just go directly to our kidneys and it won't reach the baby. The way that our body is capable of giving that nutrient to the baby and also preventing damage to our spinal cords is through eating corn. Also, the leafy greens, known as quelites in Mexico, is a great source of nutrients. For those of you who don't know that, know what word quelites, they are different herbs and greens that are found in the milpa, the corn plot, and they're edible. And there are many, many different types and infinite amounts of quelites. One study found around 60 different types of quelites. So these leafy green herbs are normally eaten fresh, and we provide them we prepare many different types of dishes with it, and they contain folic acid and a lot of iron. Iron, of course, is very important during pregnancy for babies, and it makes this available. Also, uh, uh, the consumption of corn as an atole, which is a traditional drink in Mexico, is very important for lactating mothers. It can also be consumed as a corn flour preparation. Uh, the corn flour helps helps make the watery consistency more thicker. And many of us indigenous people have problems with lactose as well. That's that milk or yogurt Dairy products cause us stomach inflammation, and this is made easier by consuming atole. And also, our mother's milk is strengthened by this folic acid, minerals, and vitamins that the corn contains. In Mexico, we also eat the corn fungus, known as huitlacoche, or corn smut to farmers. It, it may not look so pretty when you see it. For those of you who are not used to eating this corn fungus, but it is very rich in amino acids. The red corn also has powerful antioxidant properties, and it helps to conserve our skin, our black hair. It has these properties for aesthetic reasons, but it also combats cancerous cells in a selective basis. And there's a study going on in universities in Europe and the United States in order to take these cells from the black and the purple corn to fight cancer. And this is also related to things relating to biopiracy and patents and things that our indigenous people are involved in related to the way industry comes and takes our seeds from us. These are the things we must put on the table to discuss. How shall we share our traditional knowledge, but also protect our seeds from these malevolent, exploitative approaches where they seek to take over and take advantage of our traditional knowledge and practices. So this is some of what I've been learning during this period that I've been living through. And it's something for us to understand that we don't need to eat vitamin pills because these nutrients are available to our body and our DNA better recognizes them.
Thank you for the answering those questions. We actually in the breakout sessions, they'll be covering a little bit more about nutrition and corn and perhaps a few of the other foods, like she was saying. It's not just corn alone, it's a whole system. And I thank you for your great knowledge in your presentation this morning. You know, many of us have been growing corn for most of our lives, and we learned a lot from our grandparents and our ancestors. But there's still so much more that can be learned, should be learned. I don't think no one person has enough time to learn everything about corn. So that's why we have community, family, you know, and each will take on a portion of that knowledge and share it with everyone. Thank you again. Our next keynote presenter, I was asking Andrea if she wanted to introduce him also, Chili Yazzie from Navajo. I've had the pleasure of traveling with him, but I think maybe Andrea has a little bit more information that we would like to give to the participants that are just tuning in. Are you there, Andrea?
Here, yes, I am.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And you're catching me by surprise on both of these. Lucky I know them well. Yes, Chili Yazi is somebody that's known internationally, as well as very well known here in the Southwest United States, wearing many hats. He's been a Indigenous people's rights activist for many, many years. I know that he was president of the Navajo Nation Human Rights Commission at one time. He was also president of the Shiprock chapter of the Navajo Nation. But I think his real love and passion is as a traditional farmer and traditional knowledge holder. And he honors us at many of our gatherings. I have a picture of him, in fact, in a couple of pictures, I think, in the PowerPoint I'm going to be presenting when I talk about climate change. Bringing all of these areas together like we like to do in the International Indian Treaty Council, actual experience with farming and producing traditional foods and seeds, working on issues of climate change locally and internationally, and defending Indigenous people's rights in the context of our survival and our food sovereignty. So with that, I would like to introduce him. I can now say he's an elder. I've known him a long time. I guess that makes me one too, but I'm very honored to have the participation of Chili Yazi as one of our keynote speakers opening up our conference. So thank you very much. The floor is yours, Chili, and I'm very happy to invite you to speak at the gathering. The floor is yours, Chili. Unmute and please take the floor.
It appears that he may have just lost his connection. He was on, but for some reason he might have pressed the wrong button. So Clayton, we may have to wait a few moments before we can get Chili to rejoin.
Okay. Maybe someone could send him a text message or something. In the meantime, like I was saying, there's so much to learn about corn, and this type of I guess meeting summit just around corn sort of only touches a small amount of our community's knowledge and wisdom around corn. But I think the idea is that to generate interest in yourself or even in your community, to look at corn in more depth. Like I was saying earlier, we have, it's a way of, I guess, doing the inventory on the health of our community, not only I guess like our physical health, but also our spiritual health, our mental health of our community. And that last presentation really illustrated the, I guess, the that strength that we can garner from working with our mother, having the mother corn and being with us, being within our community and learning as much as we can. Even when she started talking about the the nutritional values of our corns. And many of us here in the United States and in Canada, we see all quote unquote cornfields that are non-Indigenous farmers plant and grow. Most of it is either hybrid or a genetically modified corn. And those types of corns, one, the genetic engineered corn actually isn't meant for human consumption.
We got Chili back on now.
Okay, great. I'll let Chili go from here. Thank you.
Please unmute yourself, Chili.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. And thank you, my brothers and sisters. I bid you greetings from Denetra, which is the land of the Southwest Dene people. And I am honored to be here with you this morning. I am the coordinator for the Shiprock Cooperative, Shiprock Traditional Farmer Cooperative. And this group is a nonprofit cooperative association. We have a seven-member board. And as you can see, 5 of the members are women. Our cooperative is women-led. All of our officers are women. And as by traditional farmers, what we hope to mean is that we are carrying on the practice of farming that we learned from our elders, with that intrinsic relationship that we have with the earth. And we carry on our family heirloom seeds. We continue our traditional foods, and we are revitalizing our traditional food preservation methods and keeping our traditional added value products. And of course, modern agriculture has really influenced our farmers, but we are making a concerted effort to minimize and eliminate chemical use. And we are wanting to go back to regenerative farming and make organic produce. That is who we are. And I will get into my discussion here. The Creator made a perfect earth. I'm trying to adjust my screen here. Okay. The Creator made a perfect earth. The balance made to sustain and give the opportunity for a perpetual enduring life of earth is meticulously beyond any conceivable human imagination. All things were designed to work in a great process of order for a happy and meaningful existence for all to live. Everything was provided to ensure the possibility of a forever earth life. The seed is the most profound gift and proof that the life of earth was intended to be everlasting. I have come to believe that there are 4 separate instances of creation of mankind. Our tribes of people all have their own creation stories. People of all color have their own histories. There is a path back to our roots. Even folks who have lost connection with their histories can share in our history, as we all have had common beginnings. The 4 tribes of people were given understanding of life's foundational elements. The Black tribe was given knowledge of water. The Yellow tribe was given stewardship of the air, and the White tribe was given guardianship of fire. The Red tribe is entrusted to nurture and care for the earth. 5-fingered humankind, the 4 tribes of humanity, were formed of the earth. All of our bodies, as our bodies are originated of her, we properly regard her as our earth mother. We are born of her. We belong to her and she belongs to us, as a mother and child belong to each other. Her life is our life. The 4 colors of people were given a sacred responsibility of one of the basic elements of life. Each of the 4 tribes were given assignments that were given with a complete story, with songs and ceremony. The Black tribes in Africa continue to care for the responsibilities entrusted to them. The Yellow tribe and the example of the Tibetans carry on their ceremony day and night, 24/7. There are White tribes, white folks, I understand, in the vicinity of Switzerland, who maintain vigilance with their responsibility. And clearly, we, the Red tribe, we, the Red people, retain and maintain our songs and ceremonies. It is said that one day, the 4 aspects of knowledge will come back together, and that will be the beginning of a new righteous earth. The Mayan calendar that changed in December 2012 was believed by many to be the beginning of the time of an ending, a troubled ending. My understanding is yes, it was the start of an ending, or it could be a time of renewal. The choice was to be made by the collective people of the world. The Creator is the core entity of all there is. He inhabits the vast expanse of his creation. His spirit embodies all and thus irrefutably permeates through the earth, giving her life a personage, her spiritual essence. Indigenous people know the physical and spiritual paradigms to be inseparable. One cannot be complete without the other. All creation is of one origin. There is an interconnectedness of all life. All that has been, is, and will be. This understanding has been misunderstood and disrespected by Western thought. The indigenous perspective is incontrovertible as it is true to its origination. We say that God is everywhere. That is the truth. Whether he be God, Dios, Dien, whatever name we give him, there is but one creator. Our earth, we are but one tiny speck of life in the universe. The universe is vast, beyond measure, far beyond our comprehension and imagination. It goes on forever. The skeptic may say, there must be an end. I say to him, if the universe is in a box, than what is beyond. This is the awesomeness of our Creator. All that live, human and non-human, have a physical composition merged with their spiritual energy, their breath, their soul. We all each depend on the earth for sustenance.
I brought him to the mall with me.
Our greatest
He had this
profound
mask on.
reality and dilemma is that all which we partake of for nourishment, including water, consists of souls. Thus, a life of respect, gratitude, and sincerity of purpose is paramount. The entities thought to be lifeless also have their essence of spirit energy. All life, all that have been on this planet come from one source. We are truly one being. We are three parts: the Creator, the spirit that gives us the magic abstract part of us, the ability to see, hear, smell, taste, think, and the physical earth mother part of us. And then there is we, the child, the composition product of the two sacred entities. As it is said, earth to earth, dust to dust. There is a duality in all things, a male and female essence. The air and the light, the fire, are of male constitution, and the earth and the water are female. The earth was created of purity with a perfect equilibrium to balance all her life systems. The balance of the equilibrium was to be maintained through a reciprocal sustaining between the earth and all the living. At the dawn of our life, we were blessed with original instructions that gave us life knowledge of our intrinsic relationship to all of creation. They defined our roles and responsibilities to maintain the equilibrium, to ensure the continuity of life. Each tribe of color were given similar instructions of life, how to have a happy life. The sacred trust given to each color of people was for us all to do our part to maintain the balance. Our ceremonies and songs are part of that process. Indigenous peoples of the world who retain their connection with their part of the earth understand their roles and responsibilities. The earth summons the intricate and wondrous processes of life for life to live. The earth was to live in perpetuity. The maintaining of the equilibrium was requisite to ensure her forever life. Non-human life entities continue to sustain the reciprocity. Human life has failed with that responsibility. Life is but one big circle, one big cycle. All are dependent on the other, each giving way for the new. I believe the earth was intended to live forever, but it required the balance to be maintained and the original instructions to be adhered to. Yes, sadly, the ravaging of the earth and the cruel, thoughtless discrimination of mankind is causing a trajectory towards an ending of our sweet earth mother. The fauna and the flora struggle to maintain the balance. The contention of Western man is that the body of earth and her elements are inanimate, spiritless, thus justifying his indiscriminate exploitation. Western man's relentless damage of the earth has caused the equilibrium to be precariously out of balance. The insatiable appetite of energy development is the irrefutable cause of the climate crisis. The consequences of the climate crisis are the extinction of life's species, and the mass disruption of the balance order of nature, that which we witness in the wildfires, drought, extreme weather, rising sea levels, and the pollution the world over. Killing life of tomorrow for glut of money is no way right. Burn up, dig up, or medicine earth or sacrilegious wrongs. Egocentric energy big dogs relentlessly forcing their might. Still we are earth, earth is us. We seed her and sing her our songs. We say strongly and clearly that our earth is hurt and weary. There is little notice. People are comfy. They don't seem to care. Riches by greed, scheming for more is American way and theory. Ravenous energy machine devastation. Earth life end is near. Glaciers melting, ocean is rising, crazy weather ravaging. Wildfires blazing, ground is baking, natural world is dying. GMO takeover, political selling our water, aquifers draining, coal burn climate is here, earth is furious and crying. The exploitation perpetrated upon our earth mother for profit is prescribed by the strategies perceived through the Western frame of thought. This perspective functions primarily within the physical domain. It is a deductive process derived from Western man's attempt to dichotomize, separate the physical and spiritual dimensions of life. Thus, the Western frame of thought has an incomplete foundation, a plan destined to fail, and a future that has an ending. There are two causes for the path for the path the world is on. The path that does not have an happy ending. There are climate crisis dilemmas and the racism of humans upon humans. The unfortunate conclusion is that these causes emanate from the white tribe. There has been color racism, class racism since the times of the Great Crusade to the times of the Old Testament. In 1452, the Pope issued a papal bull, an edict that said all people of color are to be vanquished and their possessions are to be taken for the good of Europe. In 1493, the Pope gifted Spain the right to possess all lands to the west, the Western Hemisphere. In the indigenous world, we have our stories of prophecy about the later days of the earth. But here I reference a modern day prophecy that is based on Western science and its measures of probability. In 2006, the late modern day theorist Stephen Hawking predicted that this planet has only 100 years left. He surmised that the cause of this demise would be the climate crisis, virulent disease, and the nuclear threat. This dire prediction suggests that only 4 generations of humanity have a future on this planet. This killing of life is caused by the merciless efforts by some governments and the extractive industry exacerbating the exploitation, accelerating the realization of the predicted demise. We do have indigenous prophecy that do speak of bad end times. By Mr. Hawking's calculation, which was stated in 2006, we have 85 years left. We know the climate crisis is real. We know virulent disease is reality with the COVID-19. And we know that world governments have hundreds, if not thousands, of nuclear armaments pointed at each other. These realities make for the greatest dilemma faced by today's humankind. Should we continue to destroy the planet or save the earth? If we are to save the earth, it requires intervention by those who will voice the earth's despair and anguish. The children of earth with good hearts are responsible, and we are compelled to voice this intervention. We appreciate all those who are on the front line to defend our Earth Mother. We are the ones, you and I, that must stand for our Earth Mother. Our greatest concern must be to protect the life of Earth, for humankind to live beyond the predicted time of demise. Our common ground is the concern for the future of our grandchildren and the coming generations. Indigenous peoples have crucial answers that will help humanity survive this great dilemma if the world will listen. We, the Red Tribe, and the Indigenous of the world who remain connected to our Earth Mother, we remain strong in our song and ceremonies and our responsibility to keep her, to defend her, and honor her. We are the keepers of the seed, the sacred and holy essence of life.
I was wondering, Chile, was that the end of your presentation? I didn't want to cut you off.
I've said my piece, brother.
Okay, thank you. I was just checking the time here. It looks like we're within our scheduled time. Thank you for providing us with the information this morning. And yeah, we as Indigenous people have been, I guess, taught, instructed of how things could go, can go, and are going. But we're also given, I guess, that knowledge on how to address those things. And part of that knowledge is, I guess, living that life that was provided for us as Indigenous people, in following those that instruction. And I know our ancestors and our grandparents shared those words with us. And a lot of times, maybe as young people, I'm speaking for myself, I don't think we took them as seriously or as to heart as we should have. Or maybe we didn't quite understand what they were trying to share with us, tell us, and instruct us. And again, that's speaking for myself. But we're dealing with it. We're seeing it. Those words that our grandparents and our ancestors have provided for us. And so, really, I'll say, we know what we should be doing and how to do it. And part of that is actually, I guess, where I see meetings like this in sharing that knowledge and even the encouragement to live that life that our ancestors wanted for us, providing good health, wealth, and prosperity. We have, I believe we're supposed to be taking a break now. Let me check the time. Yeah. And Chris had chosen, I believe a video we can be shown for a few minutes. Chris, are you there?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay, I can get the video started here. So the video will play for about 10 minutes, and after the video, we will come back and we will break out into the 4 sessions that we have scheduled for the afternoon. So let me get the video pulled up here.
Thank you, Chris.
Long ago, one of our brothers from across the sea was talking to one of our leaders, and he said, "You speak of your sovereignty. What do you mean by that?" He went into his lodge and he came out and he had in his hands corn. And he went like this. He said, "This is my sovereignty. If you're able to feed yourself, you're sovereign."
We work the whole circle of food sovereignty. We plant the food and we talk to the plant. When we harvest, we start out with our elders list. That's our first priority, to make sure they have healthy food. And then we go through the rest of the community. Everybody's children are all of our children, and everybody's elders, that's all of our elders. It's time. Food sovereignty is a must. It's the food that's going to save us, because it's the food that's always helped us to stay together, sustaining not just ourselves, but all of our people.
We're proving that money doesn't rule the world. It's food that rules the world. And that's why I got involved, Plus I like enjoying playing in the dirt. I'm always dirty, so. My dad has type 2 diabetes, which is, it's easier to control with food, but he still loves potatoes and starchy stuff, so it's hard to get him to like foods other than traditional foods.
We had to go back to our traditional foods because we weren't healthy without them. Our spirit wasn't healthy, our bodies aren't healthy. And we have to plant more. We have to get ready for these changes that are coming.
With climate change, and I heard a better term, climate chaos, because everyone's having a really hard time predicting what the season's going to be like, right? And if you have these land races that have made those adjustments over the millennia, that memory will stay in them to make those adjustments. you'll hear other maybe commercial farmers talk about yield in a field bushels per acre, right? And they say, well, this hybrid or whatever it may be will produce X amount of bushels per acre. But they're nutritionally deficient. And so I don't think anyone has yet looked at these corns especially and figured out how much nutrition per acre. There has to be a way that we could get these fields, especially the cornfields, designated as sacred sites. If our fields somehow do get assaulted by a GMO or something, we'd have more of a protection as a sacred site.
I forget the other verses.
It's a very potent form of activism and prayer when we put seeds into the ground. When we turn to the very hopeful act of planting a seed, we sort of move towards a balance of choosing hope over fear. We choose to be a survivor instead of a victim. The seeds that I carry, it's a miracle that they're still alive. You know, there were some seeds that were whittled down to just a tiny handful that were carried with families because of the displacement, the loss of land, the residential schools, the imposed shame, you know, all of these implications of colonization. And our own cultural memory, our own remembrance, our own understanding of how to plant seeds was also the same way. You know, whittled down to just like little handfuls of memory, of knowledge, of an inkling of what was, you know.
They say that a lot of the families used to come together and plant, and it was a collective effort. And they would all help one another. So families from different clans would all come and gather on certain times and plant. My mother and even my father, they have these memories of this whole valley was cornfields, and this whole valley was food. When I see that land, I'm like, wow, like, how was that?
The seed bank is a living thing. It's not a vault to store things and leave it there and say, well, 20 years from now, people in the future, they'll have seed. They might have seed, but they may have totally no knowledge because you didn't live part of it. You're not making part of it alive. And if the seed has been here 30,000 years, it all happened without a seed bank.
It will carry on if we keep the seed trade going, keeping all our strains alive. In the event that our crop fails here, our seed will be alive in another area. A seed bank within ourselves. We are the seed banks.
Corn, the seed, needs that care just like a child, an infant. You know, needs that care to be able to grow strong and healthy, and that it becomes something that's gonna nurture us.
I equate the health of our communities with the health of our landscapes. Every time we have a precip action, we have whole hillsides, just eroding away. And you look at the health of our communities, we have lots of diabetics, lots of different types of illnesses. And so I say that we bring our people out here and start healing our landscape, and at the same time we start healing ourselves. We're talking about corn, we get up and we're using the corn to pray. A lot of the people in our communities, their first meal is a tole. Corn is a way of life for us. This is our seed bank.
It's a customary thing to come in and knock at the door and whatever spirits are around, you know, greet them that way. And that's how we feel about this place is, you know, so many people coming in here and, you know, people's spirits are here in this building. And like I said before, a lot of people have come through here and helped put their hands on the mud. So, you know, or on the seeds, helping clean the seeds. Right now, it's nice and warm up here, and down here it's nice and cool.
So this is all same like the adobe. And
Yeah. Well, this one is those tire bells.
The tires.
Yeah, you can see how they sit on top of each other. Corn that you see that we've grown through the years. This is the blue corn. Hopi blue corn.
Oh, bueno.
Okay. Hope everybody enjoyed that video or did what they needed to do for this short break. We're going to be going into these breakout rooms, and with those videos, actually, there was a number of the people in that video that are presenters for today and tomorrow, and that one was produced by the group called Braden the Sacred, and they actually have more there on corn. So somebody just put a link for that, and you can check out more and more. The other thing we're going to try to do is with this event is I've asked some of the presenters to make recorded presentations and kind of expand on the subject matter, because you know, once people get, I guess, talking about their expertise, there's always more and more that could be to be added, and I'm going to try to provide that that space for little more expanded information to be shared with everyone. So, okay, if this was a live event, we'd all get up from our chairs and move into different rooms. And so this is a virtual event. We'll get off our virtual chairs and move into our virtual rooms and find a place to sit. Again, if it was an actual live event, maybe we would be sharing some corn foods, but I guess that's not going to happen. But I'm hoping we're sharing food for thought, at least at this juncture. So, Chris, if you could explain how we're going to get into those different rooms. Thank you.
Okay. All right, yeah, so hopefully everybody was able to take care of everything they needed to. Get your water, get your coffee, get a snack, get some. But we want to keep the show moving here. So we have 4 breakout sessions here. The first one, room 1, and I will kind of explain on how the sessions will work and what you will need to do in order to join the session. So I haven't started it yet, but once I explain it, I'll start the session, and then you'll be able to join an individual room. But to first let everyone know, the 4th session in room 4, traditional corn foods and nutrition, we are going to keep that in the main session here, so you won't need to join a breakout room for that. The reason for that is so that we can keep the simultaneous interpretation going in this room. So Saul and Laura, don't worry about joining a breakout room. Just stay in the main session. And we will have 3 other rooms, and you all can choose which room you'd like to join in. One note is that there is no interpretation in the other 3 rooms, and we were trying to figure out a solution to that, but Zoom does not allow for interpretation in breakout rooms. So room 1, I got a question here. What are the rooms again? Room 1 will have Restoring and Saving Seeds, led by Clayton Bascopy. Room 2, Adapting to Climate Change, which will be led by Andrea Carmen and myself. And in room 3, we will have Steven Silverbear McComber, who will be talking about planting by the moon. So in a few seconds here, I am going to start the breakout rooms. All rooms are open.
You just click on the room.
Yeah, you'll just click on which room you enter, and I see people starting to join the different rooms here. And just to remind everybody, if you'd like to participate in the traditional corn foods and nutrition session, stay in the main session. Don't join any of the rooms. That way we'll be able to keep our interpretation going. And about 2 o'clock Mountain Daylight Time, or actually 1:15 Mountain Daylight Time is when we will start to wrap up and get everybody back into the main session. And so
how do I get into room 1? Sorry.
So you will go down to breakout rooms.
Right.
And you will see room 1.
Right.
And then you'll should see a little blue button next to it that says join.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
All right.
All right. Thank you.
I don't see the breakout room option.
It should be at the bottom of your screen next to the interpretation icon. The main room, this main room that I'm in still, we are going to have
section groups.
Yes. You're in the right room, Saul and Laura. You are in the right place. Main session will be the corn foods and nutrition panel.
Chris. I think this is Denisa. I think when people go to breakout rooms, if you click on breakout rooms and you hover over the number of people that are in that room, that's where the join button is. So hover over that number by the number of the room. So if it says room 11, it says room 1 and it says 11 people, hover over that number and that join button pops up.
Thank you.
I don't know if it's my Zoom version, but I don't have anything saying breakout rooms in the bottom of my screen. Like I only have record, interpretation, and reactions, apart from sharing screen, chat, and participants.
Are you using a laptop or a phone?
I'm in a laptop.
Okay. It may be that you might need to restart your Zoom.
Right, yeah.
And that might allow you to gain access to the breakout rooms.
Okay.
Okay, so I see a problem here. When I click breakout rooms, the screen is just black. So again, that may be an issue of your Zoom software. So I would recommend to close the Zoom session and to rejoin. And hopefully that will solve the problem. Okay, I need to join my room. So if anybody continues to have any issues, please put it in a chat and I'll keep an eye on that and I will try to respond to your questions or any concerns as soon as I can. Interpreters, are you here in the room?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, so we have in this main session here, we have Saul who would like to, would you like to go first or Laura? It's up to you who would like to go first. You each will have 15 minutes to present.
I can go first.
Okay.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
I'm wearing my new headset you told me to get.
All right. We can hear you
Okay.
loud and clear.
Great. Sagoli, Sugway, Yosta Yo Walias Nuinyax. Onia Teaga, Laura Manthini.
Hi, Chris.
Hi, I'm here. Sorry, it took a little while, but I was
That's good.
got
You're helping
everybody situated.
Can people put their videos on so we can see each other? There's just a few of us, if you can. Sometimes I know if you don't have good internet, putting your video on makes it hard to be able to speak, but.
If you'd like to start your presentation, Andrea, I'm gonna go into the different rooms and then just make sure that everybody's good to go.
Okay, I am happy to do that. Chris, my question is, would somebody who's in this room like to take on being reporter, just to, if there are any recommendations? Because I don't think we announced that at the beginning. We should do that when we come back, that we plan to make an outcome document with the different recommendations that are raised in the session.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was gonna go into the rooms and then just make sure that we have our note takers there so that we have that ready.
Would somebody here, one of the participants, like to volunteer to take notes to report back on any recommendations or the things that are discussed?
So, but corn in itself, the varieties that our people grew in that time period and even today, most of it was flint corn. There are some flour that they grew, but they grew mostly flint corn. And so if you know about flint corn a little bit, it grows very well in this type of climate where we are. And if you look at corn in general, where it is throughout the Americas, you go by the different regions. So in the Southwest, of course, it's mostly all corn, flower varieties, and they're well adapted or suited to what they call dryland farming. And so we don't really have that kind of conditions here. And in Mexico, there's a variety of everything, but it doesn't have to. Some people think it has to do with the season and how hot and so on and so forth. No, it doesn't. It has to do with the length of the day. So that is a thing. And so when our forefathers came to this part of the country from the south over a millennium ago, as the people
going to pass away, and then his passing, my grandma was telling the story that he was asking her to.
That's just one thing about the corn.
Real quick, Stephen, I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
One thing I forgot to mention, and I had originally assigned somebody, but I was wanted to ask if anybody in this room would be willing to take notes of any recommendations that were made in this session. Because at following this breakout room sessions, we are planning to gather all of the different outcomes or anything that was said in these meetings, and we wanted to bring it to the main group. So if anybody could take notes, that would be super, super helpful. Any takers? I had somebody lined up for this, but I think they joined the wrong room. So I'm going to go into that other room. You can continue talking, Stephen, and I'm going to see if I can get that person back into this room. All right, go ahead. Floor is yours, Stephen.
All right. Okay, so getting back to it is that over the years, I talked with
he said he told him the story that that this boy, he knew who he was, came and talked to him before he said that he was leaving.
Hey, Clayton, I'm sorry to interrupt you real quick. Amy, do you think you can go to room 3 and take notes? We're that's the only session we don't have a note taker for. And sorry, just to also again, in all of our breakout sessions, we want to have a note taker to write down any outcomes that was said in these breakout sessions, because following the breakout sessions, we're going to have a main kind of brainstorming group about what outcomes have come from these sessions, because we want to generate a report that will include all the different outcomes. So Clayton, would you be able to do that?
Yeah, I'll take some, but I'll also actually ask maybe I see a couple of people I know that might be able to add on to my note taking here too also.
And I was just getting people coffee, you know?
Yeah. Thank
All
you,
right, we'll see you
Amy.
guys later. Room 4?
Yeah, room 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. So anyways, that was the story that she would share with us. And there was actually I guess my first stories about seed saving. And again, it has that pandemic tied to it also. And
stories. This shows, and I think it's really amazing that the 4 sacred colors of the corn are represented in both southern Mexico and Shiprock, New Mexico, in North America. The same colors, the black, the white, the yellow, and the red. And many say that these are symbolizing the 4 directions, the 4 winds. They're also the Sundance 4 directions colors, but also really importantly, they commemorate the and demonstrate the resiliency of our corn, the different varieties that we have. And our Yaqui elders told us that, you know, back in the day, before there were stores, our elders knew how to predict if it was going to be
out overnight. After it was dehydrated, we ground up our corn into a flour. We use a coffee grinder for this. There are many ways to make ganastohal. The most common way is forming them into round cakes with beans. These are usually boiled in water or buried in ashes next to a fire to cook. We like to slice up the loaves and fry them up in butter with a dash of salt in a cast iron skillet. Another way to make ganastohal is by rolling them into balls and setting them into boiling water. Sometimes we put onions or ramps in them and use them as dumplings in soup. Sometimes we use maple syrup to make them a little sweet. Today, we're making ganastohal with berries and maple syrup. For a bit of extra fun, we're making them into the shapes of turtles. To make our ganastohal today, we will need 5 cups of ganastohal flour, 1 cup of maple syrup, 4 cups of any kinds of berries, frozen or thawed, it doesn't matter, a large kettle, 1 measuring cup, a large glass measuring cup, I use a 4-cup measuring cup, a mixing bowl, a medium glass bowl, a cookie sheet, a large wooden spoon, a wooden spatula, and a small cake mold. Our mold is 1/2 cup. This will make about 10 turtles. To start, we fill the kettle about 3/4 full. Then we put it on the stove over high heat until it starts to boil. Before we put the turtles in the water, we turn down the heat so we have a nice rolling boil. When the water is about to get to a boil, we put the berries and maple syrup in a large glass bowl. Then we put it in the microwave until the berries and syrup are hot. If you use cold berries or syrup, your ganastohal might fall apart in the water. Next, we pour the hot berries and syrup into the ganastohal flour and mix it thoroughly with a wooden spoon. Next, we dip the large glass measuring cup into the now boiling water and take out about 1 cup of water. Pour about half of the water into the flour mixture. Note, the measurements are not what is most important here. The texture of the dough is. We are going for something that feels like Play-Doh. You may need a little less than 1 cup of boiling water, or you may need more. If your dough is still powdery, add a little more water. If your dough gets too runny, add more flour. Don't forget to lower the heat before you put the turtles in so you have a nice rolling boil. Too high of a boil can cause your turtles to fall apart. Next, we push the dough into the little mini turtle cake mold. When it's full, we tap it onto the counter or in our hand so the formed turtle comes out. Then, we put the turtle on our wooden spatula and lower it into the water. After the last turtle is in the water, we set our timer for 20 minutes. During the 20 minutes, we take our large wooden spoon and push the turtles around a little bit to make sure they aren't getting too friendly in the water and sticking together. After 20 minutes, we start to fish the turtles out of the water. We put them on a cookie sheet to cool off just a little bit. I think they're best if you eat them right away. If you're going to put them away for later, you should put a little bit of extra water from the kettle into the container to make sure they don't dry out too much. These turtles are so delicious, you can even eat them cold. I like to pour a little extra maple syrup over mine. When you're all done taking the turtles out of the water, we call the remaining water samp. This is a delicious drink that you can sip as soon as it cools off a bit, or you can put it in the refrigerator and warm it up the next day or so. Of course, I like to add a little extra maple syrup to my samp. We are still learning about our foods. People have different ways of preparing our foods. We are sharing the way we learned how. One of the most amazing parts about this journey to get to know our foods better is that it is connecting us to so many people throughout the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and throughout Indian country. If you have any methods you want to share, please feel free to drop them in the comments or send us an email. Yawa, Danito.
Okay, now we're going to do a video about roasting green corn. Again, let me know if you can hear it or not.
Saguli Swagwake. Hello everyone, welcome to Ungwakwa, our foods. Today we're going to show you how we harvest and roast our green corn. Green doesn't refer to the color of the corn. Rather, it means the corn is still young and not fully mature. We hope to have more on our foods in future videos.
2006 in Geneva and 2007 at the General Assembly in New York. It says that states shall consult and cooperate in good faith in order to obtain free prior informed consent prior to development affecting their lands and territories and other resources. And of course, this is a march by Lakota Indigenous peoples protesting the Keystone XL pipeline as a good example. But this is a very hard right to secure implementation of. Back even
One sure way to tell if the cob is ready for green corn is to push your fingernail in a kernel. If you get a milky burst, then the cob is perfect. As the cob reaches full maturity, the kernels harden and the sugars turn to starch. Once we harvest our green corn, we pile it up and get ready to husk them. We pull the husks off, leaving part of the stem on to help us later. Next, we lay the cobs on a grill and the grill master takes over, turning each cob over the heat for that perfect golden grill. As each cob is done, we set them on a tray to cool off a bit. When the cobs are cooled off, we take a knife and slice off the kernels. Since Haudenosaunee corn is typically an 8-row corn, the knife slides under 2 rows at a time with a satisfying slice. We either eat the corn right away, cook her in soup later that day, or preserve her for those long winter months. To preserve our green corn, we either put them in bags and freeze them, or we dehydrate them and store them in jars. We're still learning about our foods. People have different ways of preparing our foods. We're sharing the way we learned how. One of the most amazing parts about this journey to get to know our foods better is that it is connecting us to so many people throughout the Haudenosaunee Confederacy and throughout Indian country. If you have many methods you want to share, please feel free to drop them in the comments or send us an email. Yawa, Danito.
Okay, that's all I have for my presentation. I can. Okay. So just a little bit more about our group. We are getting ready to plant again for this coming season. We're going to be doing 3 different fields, 3 different growing methods. We're going to be doing conservation planting, where we don't disturb the soil and we plant right into the soil. We're doing a conventional planting with tractors and plowing the fields and using cultivating tractors for weeding. And then we're doing a long-term mound system where we put all the energy into building.
Addressing climate change. Looking at the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, we have a history of protests there because of their lack of inclusion of Indigenous peoples in the dialogue and their lack of respect for our rights and traditional knowledge. And this is a picture of just a couple of marches, 2009, 2010. Protesting the lack of respect for our rights and knowledge, even though the scientists were already beginning to recognize that Indigenous peoples were the most severely affected, our ways of life. This is us at Paris in 2015, when, again, that's when they adopted the Paris Agreement that's been in the news a lot. This is my counterpart from North America, Chief Bill Erasmus from the Dene Nation in Canada. We're protesting again. I think that's one of the things we do the most at the United Nations. Please don't think going to the UN is wearing a nice dress or suit and tie and giving a speech. We gotta take a fight to the floor there to get our voices heard. But we succeeded, and the Paris Agreement that the new US administration just rejoined after the old one under you-know-who pulled out, was actually the first legally binding environmental agreement that recognized the rights of Indigenous peoples or human rights at all. This is the preamble, which means that the whole Paris Agreement needs to be seen based on recognition of the rights of Indigenous peoples. Another demand there was to keep the global rise of temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade maximum. It's already more than that, even with the Paris Agreement, because they recognize that Indigenous peoples will be at risk of loss of land and cultural and natural heritage, and our cultural practices embedded in livelihoods, our food practices would be disrupted even at 2 degrees. Also, the Paris Agreement recognized our traditional knowledge, finally, that Indigenous peoples have something to contribute to the dialogue about preventing climate change and responding to it. And in paragraph 135, it recognized the need to strengthen knowledge, technologies, practices, and efforts of local communities and Indigenous peoples related to addressing and responding to climate change, but also created this new platform where we could exchange views. We had different consultations about how this should take place. Do we even really want to do this? This is one in Canada and one in Bolivia with Indigenous peoples from all the regions and countries and states. And finally, we also talked to Indigenous peoples and food producers. What do they think about this? You know, what are our requirements for engaging in this new platform? And the most important thing is upholding our rights. It says that we would be willing to do this and engage in it in a manner that fully respects our rights, traditional Indigenous sciences, and the richness of our ancestral knowledge. This is from the Declaration of Tlaxcala at the 4th International Corn Peoples Conference. It should say 2018, I think. But there's Chris, and Nicole. That's where actually I met Chris, is at this conference. Then I recruited him. We've affirmed that probably, you know, a better way than traditional knowledge is to say our ways of knowing. This is a quote from elders in Canada that really were the first ones I heard use that terminology back in 2017 in Northern Ontario. And I think it's a better terminology. We're trying to use that at the UN rather than traditional knowledge. Sounds like something that's static, it's set, it doesn't change. Whereas ways of knowing shows that continuing, ongoing relationship that we have. And this is finally the adoption of the local communities and Indigenous peoples platform. These are the countries and Indigenous peoples celebrating the adoption. And one really important thing, the declaration that was created by the UNFCCC affirmed the UN Declaration on Rights of Indigenous Peoples in its entirety and called for equal and direct participation by Indigenous peoples and states. This is the first UN body where we got to choose the representatives, the members that would sit for Indigenous peoples. This is us, the current group right now. 7 Indigenous representatives and 7 country representatives. And myself, who's kind of 4th from the left, and Yo Mulalap, who's actually an Indigenous person, but he represents the country of Micronesia and the small island developing states, are the current co-chairs of that body. But it's still a challenge. This is a demonstration by Indigenous youth in 2019 at the COP25. Remember, COP is Conference of the Parties of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. It happened in Madrid. It's the last one they had in person. And the youth are still protesting the lack of recognition of our rights in these dialogues. And I just want to end by showing a couple of examples, maybe more important, but definitely linked to the international work that Indigenous peoples are doing. This is seed trading and seed sharing. As Berenice showed, there's so many natural varieties of our corn. And now Indigenous peoples in areas like Chris, like the Hopis that know how to grow corn with hardly any water, are sharing those drought resistant seeds to Indigenous peoples that are now in drought situations. These are Indigenous peoples from Guatemala, from Mexico, and Oklahoma, United States, sharing and trading seeds, just like we always did since time immemorial with each other. Another example that we've used is the restoration of the buffalo. And this is a picture. About 60 different tribes are restoring the buffalo that were wiped out as an act of war by the United States government when it was fighting the Indigenous peoples. There's a phone. And in 2015, there was a blizzard in South Dakota and 100,000 cattle died because it was because of climate change, came really early before they brought the cattle into the barns, but no buffalo died, zero. So bringing back our traditional foods, this is another example, is a way of being resilient to climate change. We also have very important elders sharing the knowledge with our youth. This is tribal school in Chickaloon, Alaska, telling them how to dig the roots and the wild plants. And just to end, I want to say the quote again I said at the beginning from Chiliazi at the third International Indigenous Peoples Corn Conference in Guatemala. He said, putting seeds in the ground is the most essential of all strategies for the protection of the corn. The other strategies on all levels, and that means from the United Nations to working on the country level, whatever we're doing to change policy and defend our rights, says the other strategies on all levels we have described will serve to support this simple and profound life-giving act. So keep planting, keep talking to the plants, keep sharing with them, and they'll share with us. Take care of them and they'll take care of us. And these are our future generations learning from us about how to respect, nurture, love, and care for our foods. Choko Tasia.
Thank you, Andrea, for that. Good knowledge and a good way to get this session started here on adapting to climate change. And apologize for joining a little bit late. Just trying to make sure everybody gets situated, but it looks like we're good to go. And I am going to share my screen here. I'll introduce myself again. Okay, are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, you see the picture here? Great. All right, so again, my name is Chris Honani. My Hopi name is Lomokoiva, which translates to the nicely growing tobacco plant. I am a Many Goats clan, and I am originally from Tuba City, Arizona. And I am currently the admin and programs assistant for the International Indian Treaty Council. And just as Andrea had said earlier, I had first became involved with the Treaty Council through the Indigenous Peoples Corn Conference that was held in Tlaxcala, Mexico a few years ago. And I believe it was by fate that I was invited to attend that conference, where I was able to meet Andrea, and I was able to share my background and my knowledge in corn. And so the picture you see here now is a picture of my family's blue cornfield out on the Hopi reservation. And as you can see here, you don't see any real lush vegetation besides the corn plants and the weeds on the outer edges of the field. And that is due to the lack of moisture that is found on the Hopi reservation. We don't have any large standing bodies of water. We don't have any lakes, rivers, or streams that we are able to use for irrigation practices. And so the traditional form of farming that we do is dryland farming. And if you're not familiar with what dryland farming is a system of farming that relies only on rain and snow to provide moisture to the soil and to the plants. And this is a system that is very ancient, and it's actually practiced in many parts of the world as well, not just Hopi. And so when I think about adapting to climate change, I think of my family's field. I think of my people and our traditional ways of growing, because it's not normal that you'll find farms or fields that are irrigated solely by rain and snow. And really, snow is probably the most critical component of dryland farming, because that is what will provide that initial moisture in the ground when it comes time for planting season. And I don't know if many of you are aware, or you might start to be hearing it more, but the Western US, primarily the Southwestern US, is really experiencing one of the worst levels of drought that we've seen in about 1,000 years. And some scientists, I believe, say that since the year 2000, we've entered a phase of what is called a mega drought. And it's very interesting to think that we've been in this period of mega drought. I'm 26 years old. I was born in 1994. I know I'm still a young guy, but thinking about it, I have lived since the beginning of this so-called mega drought. I don't really have any real memory of what it was like not to live in a state of drought. And unfortunately, I think that is kind of becoming the norm, especially with farmers in the West and Southwest US. We are preparing to live in this state of drought for the foreseeable future. And so we, as much as we would like to have control over this situation, we don't. There are some things that we can do to try to adapt to this situation. And one of those things that I fully believe in is our traditional Hopi seeds will allow us to better adapt to climate change. So can you see the picture here of the blue corn? Yeah. So this is a picture of my family's Hopi blue corn seed that was grown through dryland farming. And it's a seed that my family has saved for generations and generations. I can't tell you when we started to save this seed, but if you know the story of the Hopi people, you'll know that the blue corn is a symbol of who we are as Hopi people, because it manages to grow and thrive in the most challenging conditions, whether it be extreme heat, extreme dryness, and high winds and fluctuating temperatures. This is a seed that is very resilient to those conditions. And I see this seed as a way to continue to adapt to climate change. We need to remember to save these certain seeds, because I'm sure Hopi blue corn isn't the only seed that is able to adapt to these climate conditions. I'm sure there's seeds all over the world that have this special ability to thrive in high heat, low moisture conditions. And so we need to remember to protect those seeds and not to allow for industrial agriculture to take a hold of these seeds and to turn them into something that is not what's the word, maybe appropriate for the general population of the world. You know, this seed can only grow in certain conditions. It's not a solution for everybody in the world because this seed requires, like I said, it doesn't like a lot of water. Actually, it will grow to produce the ears when the conditions are just right. And on the Hopi Reservation, on the Hopi Mesas, the conditions are just right for this crop. In some different areas, I've heard this corn has been grown pretty well, but it just really depends on where you are. But locally adapted seeds are what you really want to be able to look for and to protect. I know a lot of people back home on the Hopi Reservation will look for seeds at you know, some of the supermarkets, and they'll come to find out that those seeds don't grow very well there, and mainly because a lot of these seeds that are sold in supermarkets and stuff, they are used to a lot of moisture, and you can't find that back there home on the Hopi Reservation. So this is another variety of Hopi seed that we produce as well. It's a Hopi white corn. Hopi white corn and Hopi blue corn are both used as flour corn. So you will be able to dry the corn out. And my grandparents, my grandmother says that you usually want to keep your corn out to dry for about 2 weeks. 2 weeks will allow for the corn to dry out completely, because you don't really want any moisture left in that corn, because that's when you'll start to run into fungus problems. You'll run into mold and those sorts of things. So you want to be able to completely dry out your seed. And the best way to do it is just to put it out on a rack, seed drying rack, and you don't have to go out and buy a special rack. The racks that we've used here are actually old mattress springs. And we were able to find a way to convert those into drying racks there. So as you see, the corn there will sit out for 2 weeks, and then we will store it. And the method of storage is also very important as well when it comes to combating climate change. And you know what a lot of us, and I think what most of us should do, is to minimize the amount of energy consumption that we use to store our seeds. And one of the more natural ways of storing your seeds is to store them in an underground storage facility. The way that my family has done it for years is we have a like a little seed room that is dug partially into the ground, into a little hill actually. And so you walk down into the ground, and in there is where it's, I would say, 10 to 20 degrees cooler than the outside, and there's no electricity required to keep those seeds cool. It's all natural. It's a natural process of cooling. And so we just had to remember to think about those ways of using natural features of the land to our advantage. We need to think about ways that we can minimize the amount of resources used to do certain things. So moving on here, you know, this is my one of the corn young corn plants that I had thinned out from one of the blue corn plants in our field. And as you can see there, you'll see that long taproot that stretches from the palm of my hand all the way down to my to the crease of my elbow. And that just goes to show how far deep down that corn will look to find water. And that in itself will go to show you that the seeds that we have traditionally grown have a special power, have a special ability to withstand climate change and to get us through these hard times. And we should never underestimate the abilities or the powers of our seeds. And I pulled this one out because I thought it was a weak uh, I thought it was a weak a sprout that wasn't gonna fully germinate into a corn producing plant. I thought that this was gonna be basically a sucker root that would just suck all the moisture out and not produce anything. So I thinned this one out from the rest of the corn sprouts because in our dryland system of farming, we plant upwards of 8 to 12 seeds per hole, and we'll thin that down to about 6 sprouts. And so this was one of the ones I had pulled out, but you know, it just goes to show that how strong it was. I didn't see it from the surface. It wasn't until I actually pulled it out and saw that. So I have been practicing this form of farming since I could walk. I usually tell people because I don't think there's ever been a year in my life where I didn't grow corn. And that's why it's very important to me. And it's another reason why I wish to travel to different places, be in different spaces to share this knowledge, to share my journey, and to tell people that Indigenous peoples have the solution to adapting to climate change. I don't think we're ever going to solve it. We'll just be able to adapt to it. And so this picture here shows me at the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, Land Degradation, and Drought. I was invited there as a youth to be a participant of the first official youth caucus at the at this convention, COP14, which was held in New Delhi, India, 2 years ago. And I can say that this was a life-changing experience for me. I was able to network with other youth from across the world and to share our challenges and to share solutions with each other. And I really, really try to push for other youth to attend these spaces because at that convention, I actually was the only Indigenous youth from North America there. And so I felt a big weight on my shoulders to represent us in a really respectful way. And so I would really hope that in the future we get more participation from Indigenous youth in these spaces because we need our voices heard. We need to be able to share this message with the rest of the world because they're not coming to our communities to learn from us. They want us to go there to teach them. And so right now, that's what we have to do. And so that's what I'm taking upon myself to do and to share that message across the world. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity to be able to do that. And as you see here in this picture, this was the first official youth caucus of that convention. And we drafted a outcome document from the caucus, and we read it aloud to the rest of the convention there, which was actually attended by India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And so I really felt that that was a very special and powerful place to be for me at that time. And so I really wish that in the future we get more Indigenous youth to attend these international bodies, policy-making bodies, because we can have a word in how we change the world and how we go about showing other people the solutions to climate change, or showing ways of how we adapt to climate change, because it's something that we're probably not going to be able to escape. So we can only adapt to it. We can only find ways to live with it. And I believe that we can, because my people, the Hopi people, have been able to do that for thousands of years. And so I feel that I don't have an excuse to not adapt to these situations. And so with that, that is my presentation. And I believe we have about 10 to 15 minutes to open it up for questions, and to just kind of share with each other. And what we will also want to do in this session is to come up with some recommendations, so that we can bring it back to the main group and share those recommendations from this group, and hopefully we can come up with a outcome document that will detail all the different recommendations that we came up with. So thank you again, and appreciate your time.
Hi, folks. Just raise your hand. There's a hand button, I think, on the bottom, or if we can see your picture, some of you are have your video on, just raise your hand so that Chris and I can see. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be questions. If you have comments or anything you would like to share. I see Martin Zare, is that how you say your name, has his hand raised. Please
Yes.
go ahead.
Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Back in the 1990s, I worked for 10 years on a project of the Middle Rio Grande in developing a long-term regional water plan for the Middle Rio Grande. Without going into any of the details, which people can find at waterassembly.org, one of the things we utilized for our understanding was the communication that we received from the trees and the tree rings. And the tree ring study at that time indicated that we were living through, in the 90s, a very wet climate. Okay, let's call it climate, wet weather. We had more rain than was usual. The tree rings taught us not to have any expectations in regards to that for the long-term future. Unfortunately, when we submitted the plan with 43 recommendations, including hydrologists, including water users and stakeholders, it was promptly filed away and never referred to again. That's going to be an issue, how to develop mitigation that Chris is talking about to address the issues. And I think it's important. The seeds are important, and the understandings are important if we are to open up the future for the young. I guess there's a whole lot I could say, but I better curb myself and let someone else talk as well. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Martin. I don't know if at the beginning you just gave a brief introduction. Who are you, where you're from? Be good if people could do that, just so we can know each other.
Okay, my name is Martin Zare. I'm Hunka of Setonska, and I live in Las Cruces, and I'm a Peace and Dignity runner. In 1992, I ran from Philadelphia to Mexico City. And in 1996, I ran from Chickaloon, Alaska to Las Cruces.
Well, great. I was probably there. I was definitely there in 1996. I lived in Chickaloon. I have kids and grandkids that are enrolled in Chickaloon. So yes, I ran in 1992 from Chickaloon to Tok. Okay, great, thanks.
How do I
So does anybody have any specific recommendations that they might have been thinking of when it comes to adapting to climate change? So far, I have one from Mary O'Brien, which is, to share locally adapted seeds because that is what will grow. And I guess one recommendation that I can think of off the top of my head is to encourage Indigenous youth to grow and protect these seeds for the future generations, because we have that responsibility to uphold that for our future generations and for the youth ahead. We need to take action now. We can't wait. We can't just keep talking about it. We have to do it now. And so that is, something that I'm thinking about now. And as a youth, I'm trying to take that responsibility to teach my younger brothers and sisters to just grow your own food, learn how to grow your own food, and learn how to save the seeds from your food. Because as what some of us may have seen in our communities last year with the COVID-19 pandemic, a lot of the stores went empty with food. Back home on the Navajo Reservation, a Hopi Reservation where I'm from, a lot of the stores had lines going out the door around the building, and they were telling people that they ran out of certain foods. And we have to change that. We can't rely on these grocery stores to keep us alive, because in a lot of ways those grocery stores are there to actually set us back even further with all the non-nutritional junk food there that's in those stores, because it's easily accessible and easily preserved. So we have to remember to find ways to also properly store our foods in our own families and to share that with each other as well.
Chris, I had a couple recommendations in my presentation that I think could be included. One is kind of the other side of what you're saying, is that like the picture I showed was of Chickaloon, actually, speaking of Chickaloon, Chickaloon's tribal school, where they're providing opportunities, tribes, communities, individual farmers and food producers, and organizations to actually provide opportunities and programs where that sharing can take place. Because we all know, and this is something that's been raised in common across the world when we've done these conferences. We want our kids to go to school. They used to be raised, in the fields or in wherever, on the rivers with their grandparents. But now that we want them to go to school, we want them to get an education so they can function. But then how are they learning these things? We have to provide those opportunities and programs. And the picture I showed was the Chickaloon Village Tribal School, where they brought elders and took the kids out, to the forest to show them how to dig the roots. So I think that could be a recommendation. And also that we reestablish the trade, like you say, share locally adapted seeds, but also we need to share seeds among ourselves or revitalize those trade relationships and trade routes that we always had. As Berenice talked about, corn was first domesticated in southern Arizona and Guatemala. Southern Mexico and Guatemala. And from there, through trade, it spread and it adapted culturally and environmentally. So, the Mohawks grow it where it snows, now. And those ways of, like your seeds, the Hopi seeds and other seeds that grow quickly, that grow without much water, those are really needed now in places that maybe didn't need them so much before. So that revitalization, I think, is really important too, of some things. And the other one is what you recommended, is that Indigenous peoples, if they can, and especially young people, participate in the international bodies that affect our food systems. whether it's desertification, climate change, biodiversity, UN Food and Agriculture Organization, to make sure that Indigenous peoples' rights and knowledge are respected in these global policies, because they're going to affect us down on the ground. So our voice needs to be there, and that we apply that rights-based approach on all levels. So there's just some recommendations that were brought out, including by you, dear. Does anybody else have any recommendations to add? And I think Mary, or who's going to share back with the group? Natasha, go ahead. You got the floor. Unmute and.
Balaliak, very, very grateful and humbled to be participating and able to hear all the good words that are being shared. I am Nastaris Mi'kmaq. My people grow corn, but it's itty bitty little corn. It's under a meter tall. I do grow my people's corn. I'm currently living in Ottawa, Canada. In urban environment, I have an urban farm plot where I help to teach others how to grow traditionally, how to listen to plants and see what they're telling us about what their needs are. So I think I would add that to a recommendation to make sure that people have like hands-on experience with the corn and sit with it and other plants that we're growing and diversify. Like, yes, grow what has been working all along, but with the climate chaos that we're encountering here, I'm trying corn that's from a little bit further south. I'm trying corn that's from a little further west. I'm trying corn that's a little further north. I'm growing corn that's from further east. That are my people, but there's not really anything further east that's corn. I mean, we're on the edge of the continent. So trying out the different things. And if there's someone you're connected to or have networked with that is from a region that's having the sort of, that has corn or other plants growing and used to the conditions that are showing up where you are, trade with them, trade seed. Find out, will that corn, will that tomato, will that bean grow here where you are? Will it grow with the other plants that you're growing? If you grow in the Three Sisters or the Seven Sisters, or I've been hearing such good things about milpas that have like many different plants growing. One of the things we're encountering here are waves of insects that are eating our crops that we've never seen before. Growing up, I never saw the several of the insects that are now coming at our varieties of onions, our squash, our so diversifying not only with the different varieties of foods, but the different varieties of each of those foods. Find what's going to withstand those insects. I could keep going. Apologies.
Right, no, those are great ideas.
Doors.
No, I'm glad you brought up the topic of insects and how climate change is starting to affect the patterns of these insects, and how in some areas we're starting to see either more or less of certain insects. And that's really an important way to really pay attention to what's going on in the climate is to pay attention to the bugs, to the insects, to the animals, because they'll be the ones to really show you what's going on or what's about to happen. And so
Mhm.
it's really important to pay attention to them as well.
I have two more really quick. One is don't be afraid to try something that seems literally outlandish. I had tomatoes showing up, volunteering in my gardens. And so I started collecting the seeds from the ones that produced. And I now have over 32 varieties of tomatoes that I can put seed in the ground here. And by August, that seed in the ground around now. And by August, I will start harvesting. So, and that people around me are all saying, you can't do that. That won't work. It might. Try.
Yeah.
And the last final thing is I have received so much instruction through dream to pay attention to your dreams. Walaliak.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to add that about, I think we should emphasize, which you did, Chris, in your presentation, about re-establishing our traditional methods for addressing insects. Pancho talked about that when he was on the webinar that we had, a couple months ago, how they're doing that in Guatemala, but as I think everybody knows, it's worldwide known, because we've taken to the United Nations and a lot of places, the extreme detrimental impacts of the use of toxic pesticides in our Yaqui territories in northern Mexico, including a lot of deaths of children born with leukemia, and just so many extreme birth defects and cancers. So we began to talk to the elders there too. What did they used to do, before there were chemicals, because there was always insects and they eat plants, so they actually told us about the methods that they used to use, even talking to the insects and knowing what ones to make an agreement with them that they could have so much, but not the rest. And, everyone was so amazed. They said, why didn't you tell us this before? And they said, well, nobody asked us, and you guys were just happy to use all these sprays and, all of that. Nobody came to us and asked us. And we don't just tell it, we want to make sure people will listen. So I think, it's important to ask about those things from our elders, or find out what we used to do and try to do that again, and bring that back, so that we're not putting chemicals all over our food and bodies and, future generations.
5 seconds and the room's gonna close.
Our corn as a way of evaluating where we stand in today's world also. So I'll wait for Chris to return. And
we're back, Clayton. Everybody's back in the main session now.
Okay, great. We finished, so we're all back, and I guess we have a little bit of time here to provide feedback from each of the groups.
Yeah, so we, I believe we assigned somebody to report back to the main session on our outcomes.
We do too.
Okay.
So you want to go start from the top down, 1, 2, 3, 4, or how do you want to do it?
Yeah, let's do that. Let's start from room 1.
That was me, and I had asked Denisa if she could, Denisa Livingston, she was taking notes, and maybe we can, I don't know how much time we have to present from room 1. 10 minutes or 5?
I think maybe about 10 minutes, since we have about 40 minutes left. That will give 10 minutes per room.
I don't know if she came back.
Yate, I'm here.
Okay, thank you, Denise, if you will, if you can.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We had a really interesting conversation, but of course, not enough time for everyone to contribute and go through all of the things that we were discussing. So we are in breakout number 1 with Clayton, and the topic of seed preservation and seed keeping. And I will give you some of the main highlights, and I'll call on my sister Terilyn to contribute if you like, as the conversation was between Clayton and Terilyn as well. So Clayton had spoke about the issues that we're facing, especially with the climate chaos and what is happening with the corn. We need to be seeking varieties of corn that that will survive in wet climates or even in the cold. He talked about the resiliency of the corn, as well as the movement to bridge the intergenerational work between the youth and the elders, and the importance of having these events and trainings that he's been hosting for many years now. And part of the engagement of who is participating are more younger people, 35 years and younger. And the importance of this, of the teachings and engagements has been really around every type of circle that we're involved in, whether that's on social media, community members, workshops. And part of this is really around the lifetime of learning, that it may not take one class, but it takes multiple forms to be able to go through this. So with the work, the New Mexico Seed Sovereignty Alliance was created to understanding the impact of GMO seeds, and also to have an opportunity for seed exchange and celebrations around food culture and music, and composed of many groups around New Mexico, not only Indigenous peoples, but every working community that is impacted by this, with the Center of Seed Keeping and Seed Education as one of the focus. So as we go about our local work, he also talked about the seed library and the need for seed banks on the local level, and talking about the new building that they have there with the passive solar heating and cooling for operations, and the seeds kept in the basements using or having the building made of recycled materials, and using these sustainable ways of building so that we could seed keep. But the building of the network of seed collection for a backup system in case there's an emergency is very critical, as well as politically, how do we protect our seeds and also protect them from outside sources, and to be more informed about biopiracy and the need to plant every year to plant seeds. So our sister, Terilyn Brandt, expressed that as a seed keeper, we are responsible for growing those seeds and creating new seeds. And so part of the concerns is really seeking a space and elevating voices. The narratives that need to be coming from the peoples need to be coming from themselves, and not from representatives or attorneys or academia like she's seen. The traditional governments and also the traditional societies need to be consulted with. Data needs to be collected to prove that we have had these seeds since time immemorial, and claiming the lineages and also telling the stories is really critical, and us knowing our stories on how we have the relationship with them is important. Rolando asked a question about GMO and the impact of that. And so the response to that is much of the leadership are farmers, and that farmers need to take strategic actions, take preventive measures, and also agreeing not to get involved with GMO seeds. And also we need to create policies around this to create GMO-free zones, no matter how illegal it may be, that we can be challenged, but we really need to do this and focus on this aspect. Seed contamination by GMO seeds was also discussed, and the importance of possibly incinerating that, protecting the animals, and not giving these plants, these contaminated plants or seeds to the animals is key, so that we don't have contamination of the seeds further in our food system. And Alexis was also in our group and talked about ancestral seeds from the Caribbean and she was encouraged if there's any seeds, we don't know the viability of it. Clayton had mentioned that seeds are very resilient, although we don't know how long that they have a viability or even a germination rate. And Tara Lynn had encouraged Alexis that seeking support or even supporting those that are in Cuba to financially support them, or even find ways to connect with them, as Alexis is in upstate New York, and if she grows the seeds, will be creating a new land race of these seeds. And so that's as far as we have got. But I think the most important thing that Clayton had mentioned is that prayer is important when planting, and returning of seeds is critical. And also prayer covers the way forward in our work with our food systems and with seed protection and also the planting of them. So that's all I have, and I can pass it over to Sister Tara Lynn if she wants to add anything, or anyone from our group. Thank you.
Real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you are going to be speaking, can you please speak at a calm pace so that our interpreters are able to better follow along? I'm sorry.
I apologize about that.
I realize that we're trying to fit a lot of information in a certain time frame, but yeah. Thank you, Denisa.
I just want to add.
Sorry, I will send the
I
transcript.
just wanted. Yeah.
Thank you,
I just
Denise.
wanted to add the one thing that the United Nations Declaration for Indigenous People, one of the things I said, and we must not get caught up in thinking it's the be all and the end all. It still is a Western organization that puts our sovereignty at risk. So if we are going to rely on somebody else to keep us as a sovereign people, there's no way we should ever take our corn seed and do that. When we make decisions and rules about them, that's the end. We don't need to take them to court. We don't need a lawyer to talk about them, because once our people make those decisions, that's the way it is. The UN is a nice organization, but at the end of the day, all they want is our knowledge and our seeds, right? And who knows what will happen. Thank you.
So that's group one. Group two next, I guess. We're going down the line.
Room 2, adapting to climate change. Who did we have to provide the recommendations for this?
Was Mary, wasn't it?
Yeah. Okay, Mary says she doesn't have a speaker.
Chris, maybe you could just go over some of the recommendations. She had a speaker during the small group because she read us her recommendations, but I don't know if you compiled any at the same time.
Yeah, I wrote down a few here. The ones that I wrote down so far is to so our session was on adapting to climate change. And let me see here. So some of the recommendations that I got from our group here was to seek varieties of corn that will survive in different climates. Kind of what the same thing what was said in that first session. Seek and protect the varieties that have been traditionally grown by indigenous farmers. Also, I have another recommendation to share locally adapted seeds, because that is what will grow. share seeds among our indigenous peoples, and to also revitalize our traditional trade networks. Also participate in international bodies, that policy-making bodies that affect our indigenous food systems, and to also apply a rights-based approach when it comes to this area, and to also encourage indigenous youth to continue to grow our indigenous varieties of corn, because they have specially adapted traits that will allow them to thrive in various climate conditions. I don't know, Andre, if I may have missed a couple that you want to bring up.
I think that we also talked about calling on tribes, organizations, families, food growers to provide opportunities and implement programs if need be for elders to come together with youth to pass on this knowledge. Since now it's not like the old times when young people grew up with their grandparents in the fields. Now they're going to school, so we have to create, some special opportunities. But that be the responsibility of all of us to do that.
Okay, maybe room 3.
Just one more comment. Maybe Mary can email or put in the chat her additional recommendations if her speaker went out. Since she did take notes and share them with us during the breakout session, she could make sure we get all of her recommendations if we missed any.
Okay, she agreed. So yeah, I guess we can move on to room 3. Planting by the moon.
It also in room 3.
Amy, your audio is cutting out. We're experiencing some technical difficulties here with Amy's screen. Can we then, maybe we'll go back to her and we can go on to room 4, which is actually the main session.
Okay. ¿Quién va a ser,
Okay.
Chris? ¿Yo?
So, shall I go, Chris?
Okay. Gracias.
Okay, thank you. In room 4, in our group 4, we addressed the issue of foods and nutrition based on corn, as we call it. I'm not sure how it was translated, if that's the proper translation, but food, traditional food and nutrition, our traditional corn. We had two presentations with Laura Manti, who showed us two very interesting videos about how they prepare their traditional foods based on corn that they themselves plant with their traditional native corn that they have grown themselves, and they're using to prepare different dishes, breads, and crackers and cookies and different things that they prepared that they showed us with the videos of how they use the techniques to prepare different healthy food for their communities. She even shared some recipes that I believe will also be shared with all of us. Some of us at one point we couldn't hear all the audio, so we suggested the sharing of the videos for later, perhaps on the IITC website or somewhere, because the people were very interested in this so that they could share and learn about these foods that Laura's people are recovering. And one thing that came up from one of the questions that was asked was how that came about. And she explained that they found that other people were using our corn that's part of our origin, and that should not happen, that we should assume the responsibility for cultivating our own corn and preparing our foods. So that's a question that our sister Laura brought up that should be addressed. And it was also mentioned that they are moving on from this stage into the next stage of protecting their lands and conserving their soil and using other foods as well, not only corn, but other products for the traditional use of their traditional foods. Then I, Saul Vicente, gave my own presentation where I gave the framework for the production of tortillas in our communities to give some context to how the traditional food fits into our communities using the clay oven for the oven baked tortillas. And I also explained the process for making the masa, the corn dough from the corn through the nixtamalization process, which is the technique inherited from our ancestors, where the corn is prepared by boiling it with limestone in order to remove the hull and release the nutrients that are available. And I related this to our discussion earlier this morning about folic acid. As I explained, this nixtamalization process allows the human body to absorb these nutrients, including the folic acid contained in the corn. It's a type of B9 vitamin that becomes available to us. We all need folic acid in our bodies, but especially women during their pregnancies and the gestation period need it. So I explained that about the nixtamalization process and also how it relates to the types of foods we eat in the morning and in the evening. And we eat the fresher foods in the morning where the energy is released faster for our bodies from that food for us to use it during the day. And we eat the drier toasted tortillas in the evening because they release the energy more slowly, because our bodies are going to rest at that time and they don't need as much energy. And that is something I explained in my presentation. Then we had some question and answer. One of the questions was about what ceremonies must be done for the planting, the harvesting, and the production stages. And so I explained in our regions what the ceremonies are. Ceremonies must be done prior to planting, prior to production, prior to preparing the land and planting, before harvesting and everything. Also, questions were asked and comments. It was commented that Laura explained that it's important to have two plots. If you may have a pests or problems in one plot and you don't harvest enough from one plot, you have another one. Also, it was explained that the hardwood is used. They have this hardwood in their communities that they use in the ceremonies. And it was also discussed that the ashes from the wood are used when it is not nixtamalized to obtain the nutrients available in the foods. These are some of the points that were addressed. Also, other comments were made about how all of this is related to an integral, holistic approach. And it's not only the food, but it's everything related to the ceremony and all of the activities related to the planting and the harvest that are part of our holistic vision as peoples that must be transmitted to our future generations. And this work must be carried out to maintain this relationship with our peoples and the Mother Earth and our relationship with the corn. And also, a suggestion was made to do a video on the nixtamalization process for other regions and how it's done in other regions for indigenous peoples and the United States and other regions. So that would be interesting to have a video about nixtamalization. I didn't show a video, I only had some photos. So it would be great to prepare something like that also. Well, I'm not sure if Laura has any more comments, but that is a summary and conclusion of what we did during our work group. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, those productions of some videos, educational videos is probably something that that should be done. And I'm going to try to get some of these presentations sort of expanded on and put together all into this sort of a series of videos that we can people can view again, you know, because of the time, and hopefully they can expand on their subject matter. I guess the next group is with planting on the moon? No, by the moon. I want to hear this. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm wondering if Amy, are you back on? I don't think I see Amy on, so we might have to ask somebody that was in that room to share, if you can, just what was talked about, and if you can think of any recommendations that may have been made in that session, that'd be very helpful. Steve, do you mind maybe doing a quick recap on that room?
Hello?
Hi, I can hear you now.
Okay. Oh yeah, I just said that I was a bit tired, but I was just saying that I was just thinking of something that Clayton said, planting on the moon. So I didn't share this yet, but I actually got a call or a message, and there's actually, I was asked, um, they actually want to do a project where they want to plant on the moon for real, and they want to know what I thought about it, and they want to know if we be interested in having some indigenous seeds sent to the moon so they could plant it there as part of the space station or whatever they're doing. I says, wow. I said, that's something that, you know, I can't just say, yeah, go ahead. You know, I really have to talk with, but we haven't gotten together because we can't get together here in our community. Even in the longhouse, we're not able. So we can't talk about it yet with a group of people. Oh, there she is. Maybe she can do the let her do it.
Hello. I apologize. We're in the same office. I'm not sure why that happened. So thank you, Stephen, for your knowledge. It was really heartwarming for everyone. And so some of the notes that I took here, which I was going to put into the chat, are the importance of, excuse me. Excuse me. It's the importance of the moon phases, the moon knowledge, in accordance with everything else that was talked about in the other sessions, and to recognize how everything is interconnected. And we talked about the moon knowledge, focusing on 4 phases, the new moon, waxing moon, full moon, and wax off moon or waning moon. And that each moon has its own special energy and gravitational pull that the plants are enriched by. And also just taking notes of when we're in the new moon, it's the time of the planting of things that are green, such as leafy greens, herbs, tobacco, cannabis, flowers, all kinds of flowers. And then the wax on moon or half moon, planting of things that have seeds inside the fruit. So peppers, tomatoes, beans, pumpkins, and corn, but also that there are 2 phases that corn can also be planted in. And then the full moon, the planting of roots, onions, potatoes, flowers with bulbs, berries, trees, and also transplanting and dividing plants. And then the wax off moon, that's the time to put in some work, to do some weeding, to do hoeing, and just things that the busy work in your garden. And then also talked about some of the need for nurturing and providing nutrients to your soil. Stephen also shared that lime in the soil is important to offset any changes in the soil, such as that occurs, I think, acid rain and things like that. And that it's important to not only just write this knowledge down and to listen to it, but to put it into practice and to gain your own experience for planting in your area and with the moon phases. And to pay attention to these things. We had some observations about not only the phases of the moon, but also different things that happen with the moon, like when the moon has a halo around it, and the things that occur with that, the changes in weather and what have you. And I think one of our one of our recommendations is that this knowledge should be taught in our schools. not just Indigenous schools, but all schools for young people, especially as communities literally go back to their roots in planting and farming, and how important that is. So those are the notes that we took for that session. A lot of it was just listening, and also just thanking Mr. McComb for all of his knowledge. And if there are any other recommendations or things that I missed, please put them in the chat and I'll take note of that for breakout session 3. Thank you.
Thank you. It would have been great if we could have sat in on all these different sessions. So I'm hoping people are taking good notes, and we'll send it, and hopefully we can compile these into some recommendations at the end of this these 2 days. It's tough to when you're planning events like this, especially virtual events, you never know what's going to happen. And you know, you get little glitches here and there through the internet and phone connections and all of that. And so we try our best to try to schedule things so that they fit in time and make best use of people's attention. It looks like we're I won't say right on time, but in good time for the end of today's session. We I don't know if there's someone to reach out to Valentina if she was going to close today's session. Was that the plan, Chris?
Yeah, I think so. I saw her on. So I don't know if that's what she was wanting to
Okay.
do for us.
Again, we always have a backup or try to have a backup. Oh, there she is. Okay. Looks like she's getting ready. So we'll have her close today. And tomorrow it's the same time, same place. And we'll continue this conversation. We have a few keynote speakers lined up for tomorrow, and more sharing of our information around corn. So with that, I'll leave it over to Valentina to close today's session. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Agradecemos a los
Thank you very much. I
Thank you very
thank
much. We thank the
our
grandmothers, the
grandmothers and
grandfathers
grandfathers
for this event that took place, that we as Indigenous peoples can continue to practice our ways, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our grandma, grandfather. We thank you all. We thank the heart of the earth, the heart of the sky, for all the panelists that were here and that shared with us and that shared their knowledge, and to give us power to give. Thank you, grandparents. Thank you from all the colors of the corn and all the cardinal points. We thank you for all that. We thank you for all that, from everything that we receive from you, from the earth, and also all of you that were connected with us today. And we ask that you're pleased, that the blessings reach each one of you. Thank you so much. And thank you for being with us. And we thank you, Mother Earth, and we thank Father Sky. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Valentina, for participating with us today and making our path, our road in a good manner so that things would be cleared for us. So our hearts and minds will be open for the words that we heard today. And I'm grateful for everyone for spending this time with us today. We're going to repeat tomorrow another session talking about corn again. Like I said earlier, there's so much to know, so much to learn about this, and I hope this is a primer for everyone that it'll inspire you to not only to plant corn, but to be eating corn and to be sharing that knowledge with your fellow community members. So that's it for today. It's unless Andrea or Chris would have some other closing comments.
I'd just like to thank everybody for participating. I'm standing in back of Amy here so she could use my computer. Thank you for partnering with us again, Clayton and Shanifa. And I know we're just half done. And so I hope everybody has a good rest of their day, and we'll join again in a good way tomorrow. It was so good to hear everybody. Yes, I wish we could have heard all the breakouts, but the reports from them sounded great, and onward and upward. Thank you. Joe Quiltesia.
Thank you, everybody. Kokwa. We hope to see you tomorrow, same time, same place.
All right.
All right. Thank you to our interpreters as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Great work.